Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. He had witnessed the Eight Tails' strength firsthand during its rampage years ago, when it had torn through the village. Despite its immense power, the Eight Tails hadn't been able to completely overwhelm him. At the very least, I had been able to keep it occupied and buy time. But against Snowy, I had been utterly helpless. In every aspect, power, speed, and precision, he had been completely outclassed. His only advantage had been his durability, and even that had only mattered because Snowy hadn't been fighting seriously. Faced with the Eight Tails, A could resist and hold it back. Against Snowy, everything he tried was futile. A clenched his fists, his mind racing as he analyzed the fight. To him, Snowy wasn't just a summoning beast but a tailed beast far stronger than the Eight Tails. Dodai's expression grew conflicted. After a moment's hesitation, he recounted what had happened after Snowy had knocked A unconscious. Rip. A, wrapped in gauze and bandages, sat up abruptly despite the pain, his muscles flexing and snapping the bindings as he exclaimed, "Are you saying Hidden Leaf Village has found a way to create perfect Jinchuriki? And that the Nine Tails is afraid of this Snowy? What kind of ridiculous name is that? For such a terrifying creature, they chose such a soft and cutesy name?" Dodai's eye twitched as he glanced at the pile of shredded bandages. "Doesn't that hurt?" he muttered. Ignoring the question, A groaned in pain and reluctantly lay back down. Dodai shook his head before continuing. "It's unclear. We'll have to discuss it with Hidden Leaf Village to confirm." However, the Nine Tails Jinchuriki appeared to be fully transformed, a golden Nine Tails formed entirely of chakra. Hiss. A sucked in a sharp breath, not from surprise, but from the pain shooting through his body. It seemed it did hurt after all. Forced to remain still, A grimaced as Dodai added grimly, but it was clearly the Nine Tails in control, not the Jinchuriki. Its aura, its demeanor, and even its voice made that obvious. Chapter 511, The Nine Tails, Did Takuya just compliment me? So, after Snowy punched it, the Nine Tails just settled down? Lying in his hospital bed, A felt like he was dreaming. Was this really the ferocious Nine Tails? Hidden Cloud's village wasn't unfamiliar with the Nine Tails, they had once organized a team to capture it. The result? A catastrophic failure with heavy losses. The Nine Tails was a force of nature, something no ordinary person could ever hope to confront, except, perhaps, someone like Hashirama Senshu, the god of shinobi. Yet, when faced with Takuya and Snowy, the Nine Tails had become as obedient as a dog. It didn't make sense. Sure, foxes were technically canines, but this was a tailed beast. And not just any tailed beast, this was the mighty Nine Tails. Where was its rage? Its defiance? Its hatred for humanity? Why was all of that suddenly gone? It's true. Dodai, standing nearby, was equally baffled. Hidden Leaf Village has agreed to discuss this matter with other villages after the celebration. It seems they're willing to sell this information, though it will likely come at a price. Buy it. I didn't care what the cost was. Negotiations were always about balancing interests. Hidden Cloud's village had plenty of resources and money. If it meant getting their hands on this information, no price was too high. "You'll handle the negotiations personally," I ordered, his tone firm. "No matter the cost, we need to acquire the information on perfect Jinchuriki. Also," A's expression darkened. "Contact the old man. We need to reassess Hidden Leaf Village's strength and completely overhaul our war plans. Hidden Leaf Village isn't as weak as it seems, not with Yagami Takuya and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki in their ranks. Damn it. Hidden Cloud's village had spent so much time preparing for war, and now all those plans had to be scrapped. Rewriting those strategies would cost an unimaginable amount of time and resources. But with Takuya and Kushina as factors, I couldn't risk proceeding with the original plan. 2 wars didn't break them, so what makes us think they're vulnerable now? As long as Takuya and Kushina remained in play, any attempt to attack Hidden Leaf Village was doomed to end in disaster. This kind of uncontrollable power couldn't be measured in numbers. The war plans had to be abandoned. I'll contact Lord Raikage. Dodai said with a nod. As for the perfect Jinchuriki information, I'll handle the negotiations. Good. I trust you with this. Also, call a doctor for me. Meanwhile, Hidden Leaf Village was abuzz with celebration. The villagers wore bright smiles as they flocked to the Hokage's office to witness this historic event. Amid thunderous cheers, the third Hokage and Tsunade stepped onto the rooftop of the Hokage's office. As Takuya had predicted, what followed was a quintessentially Saratobi-style speech, long-winded, sentimental, and laced with the firewall rhetoric. It included everything from self-reflection to an overly elaborate apology. I regret coming here. Can I go home and rest now? Nawaki looked like he was on the verge of tears. He had expected the third Hokage's speech to drag on, but he hadn't anticipated it would be this long. It had been nearly 3 hours, stretching from midday into the afternoon, and it showed no signs of stopping. How is he not tired? Beside him, Minato gave Nawaki a bemused look, as if to say, what did you expect? Minato, too, wished he could leave. If he'd known it would be this tedious, he wouldn't have come. Now he was stuck standing guard like a statue in front of the Hokage's office, unable to relax or even sneak a glance at the crowd. At least the other security teams could take breaks and watch from the sidelines. Honestly, Takuya was the smart one. Nawaki muttered. The third Hokage's passion for the will of fire was deeply ingrained, and his penchant for marathon speeches was something Takuya had experienced firsthand during his academy days. After that, Takuya had vowed never to attend any event where the third Hokage was scheduled to speak. He feared he might lose his patience and end up throwing a shoe at the man's endless monologue. Come on, old man. Enough already. Tsunade was similarly drained. In her opinion, a brief speech would have sufficed. There was so much work to do, so many important matters to address. This wasn't worth hours of rambling. But clearly, the third Hokage disagreed. Perhaps he felt compelled to make one final, glorious contribution before stepping down, and so he kept talking. When the third Hokage finally finished, bowing in apology and stepping aside, Tsunade felt a wave of relief so profound she nearly cried. In stark contrast to the lengthy address that preceded her, Tsunade's speech was brief and to the point. As the granddaughter of the first Hokage, I will carry on my grandfather's legacy. I will protect this village, our home, and our family. The will of fire? Enough of that. We're all sick of it already. Tsunade's straightforward approach cut through the fatigue, leaving the crowd stunned for a moment before erupting into deafening cheers. No matter where you stood in Hidden Leaf Village, the sound of celebration could be heard. So, it's finally over. Hearing the cheers from the Hokage's office, Takuya shook his head with a smile. From the initial applause to the conclusion, the entire event had taken nearly 5 hours. Good thing I didn't go. Takuya felt immensely grateful for his foresight. Knowing Tsunade's personality, she would have kept things concise, but with the third Hokage involved, there was no escaping hours of meaningless drivel about the will of fire. The man could drone on for hours, saying nothing of substance, and Takuya knew he would have gone mad listening to it. Let's deal with the Nine Tails now. Takuya muttered. Leaving Kushina behind, he brought Snowy with him as he entered the ceiling space. The Nine Tails, napping lazily, jolted awake the moment Takuya arrived. Sensing something amiss, the beast panicked and bellowed, "Brat! Don't push your luck. I only acted for your benefit. Kushina hasn't fully mastered controlling my power yet, so I had to take over. I haven't even done anything yet. Why are you panicking?" The Nine Tails was clearly flustered, while Takuya looked utterly baffled. Perched on his shoulder, Snowy cast the Nine Tails a disdainful glance. "Where's all your bravado now, Nine Tails?" "Ahem. You did well," Takuya said with a deliberate cough. "Huh?" The Nine Tails blinked, its massive eyes narrowing in confusion. It stared at Takuya, trying to process what had just happened. Did this brat just compliment me? For a fleeting moment, the Nine Tails felt an odd sense of satisfaction. Wait, what the hell am I thinking? I'm the Nine Tails. I don't need this brat's approval. But still. Chapter 512, Two Bodies, One Soul, don't you want to try? You did well stepping up in a critical moment, but you were too reckless. You need to assess the situation better next time, Takuya said, wagging a stern finger. There were so many spectators on site, most of them Hidden Leaf villagers, along with many guests. If chaos had broken out, the consequences would have been severe. Takuya's tone was serious as he concluded, "Don't do that again." "Got it." The Nine Tails instinctively lit up with joy but froze the next second, its grin turning stiff. Realizing something was off, the Nine Tails' expression darkened, and it snapped, "Damn brat. I'm a Nine Tails, not some dog. Aren't foxes part of the canine family?" Takuya's amused gaze met the Nine Tails' furious glare. The beast tried to appear tough, but its demeanor betrayed a more submissive attitude. "You wretched brat. I'll devour you." Furious, the Nine Tails lunged at Takeya, jaws wide open. Thump. Snowy's tail lashed out, striking the Nine Tails squarely on the head. The beast yelped in pain, its eyes wide as saucers. Everyone knew that if a canine snapped its jaws shut suddenly, it was likely to bite its own tongue. Watching the Nine Tails clutch its mouth in agony, Takeya couldn't help but shudder. "That looks painful. MMFF. MMFF. Thud. Thud. Disrespect my master, will you? I'll beat you to a pulp." Snowy, thoroughly irritated, continued her assault on the Nine Tails. Ever since her powers had grown, the once mighty Nine Tails could do little more than cower under her dominance. What was once a rivalry had now devolved into a sibling dynamic, with the Nine Tails as the younger, weaker one. "What are you doing?" On top of the beating, Snowy began tugging at the Nine Tails' chakra, her actions rough and unrelenting. The Nine Tails panicked. Unlike most creatures, its chakra could regenerate, but losing too much too quickly would still harm it. Seeing Snowy rip away its chakra with such force, the Nine Tails was alarmed. "Stop. Stop, I'll listen to orders next time. I was wrong. Please stop." When a Jinchuriki borrowed a tailed beast's chakra, they usually took only a small amount. Snowy's method, however, was akin to slicing off large chunks of meat. The Nine Tails had no choice but to yield. "Behave yourself." Snowy growled. The Nine Tails tried to resist, but Snowy only grew angrier. "If it weren't for my master asking me to help, I wouldn't bother with a smelly fox like you. You're taking my chakra for my own good? How generous of you." Wait, this wasn't just about chakra. Snowy was taking part of its consciousness as well. Unfazed by the Nine Tails' protests, Snowy ripped away a significant portion of its chakra and a small piece of its consciousness before swallowing it whole. As Snowy began to chew, the Nine Tails let out a pained howl. Its cries were almost pitiful. Takeya shook his head and gestured for Snowy to continue. "Don't waste time. Master. This fox stinks." Snowy muttered between bites, her face twisted in distaste. "It really does." Takeya chuckled awkwardly. Compared to the fragrant Snowy, the Nine Tails' presence was far less pleasant. Bleg. Snowy spat out the chewed remains, her tongue sticking out in disgust as she hurriedly fled the ceiling space. Clearly, she needed to rinse her mouth to get rid of the lingering foulness. The Nine Tails, still reeling from the earlier assault, stared blankly at the discarded remains. "What? Wait, did I shrink? No. That wasn't right. Why is there a smaller version of me?" Inside the ceiling space, two Nine Tails, one large and one small, stared at each other with equally dumbfounded expressions. Takeya bent down, grabbing the smaller Nine Tails by the scruff of its neck. Holding it up, he addressed the original, "Consider this a reward. Snowy can't stand you, but she still helped. Try adapting to having two bodies, it'll let you maintain this smaller form outside." Pausing, Takeya added, "If you find it troublesome, you can let your main body sleep and transfer your consciousness and spirit into this one. That way, you'll be able to roam freely, though you won't be able to stray too far from Kushina, since she is still your Jinchuriki and most of your chakra is sealed here. This body doesn't have much chakra, so avoid using it for combat. If you drain its reserves, it'll disappear, and Snowy won't be helping you next time." The Nine Tails barely heard Takeya's explanation. Its eyes widened as it muttered to itself, "I can go outside?" Since being captured and sealed into Uzumaki Mido's body, the Nine Tails had longed for freedom. But Mido had been unyielding, a woman as unshakable as her husband, Hashirama. She had commanded such respect within the Senju clan that even Obirama didn't dare to challenge her. Such a formidable woman would never allow the Nine Tails to run wild. By the time Mido grew old, she was succeeded by Kushina, who, while less controlling, had still managed to subdue the Nine Tails over time. Even as Kushina and the Nine Tails grew to accept each other, becoming a perfect Jinchuriki, true freedom had remained out of reach for the tailed beast. Now, an opportunity had presented itself. Even if this freedom came with restrictions, it was enough to move the Nine Tails deeply. Snapping out of its reverie, the Nine Tails looked down at Takeya, its gaze complicated. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you're an idiot." Takeya replied with a shrug. "You couldn't figure out how to split your consciousness into two bodies, so I had to ask Snowy for help." Takeya continued matter-of-factly, "Think of it like the shadow clone jutsu. Clones have independent consciousness and thought, so the same principle applies to you. You're a tailed beast, unique and unparalleled. As long as you keep your mind sharp, you'll always find solutions. If people can develop all sorts of strange forbidden jutsu, improving the mechanics of a clone technique is hardly impossible." The Nine Tails was speechless. Why did I even ask? Because I'm an idiot, apparently. With a heavy sigh, the Nine-Tails rolled its eyes dramatically. You can take your time deciding, Takuya said, turning to leave. Who would have thought this prideful fox could roll its eyes like that? Takuya mused. Maybe it's just a fox thing. Snowy's the same way. I've decided. Before Takuya could exit, the Nine-Tails called out urgently, I'll let my main body sleep and transfer my consciousness to the smaller form. Who are you kidding? I've been cooped up for decades. Given the chance to leave, why would I stay here like an idiot? The Nine-Tails could barely contain its excitement at the thought of exploring the outside world, breathing fresh air, and doing whatever it pleased. All right, Takuya said with a smile, choosing not to expose the Nine-Tails' obvious eagerness. You know how to transfer your consciousness and spirit, right? You don't need me to teach you that, do you? Such a simple task should be well within the Nine-Tails' capabilities. Chapter 513, the first thing the Nine-Tails does with its freedom is. Do I look like someone who needs help? No, do I, the mighty Nine-Tails, look like someone in need of help? The Nine-Tails, its massive body sprawled across the ceiling space, closed its eyes and transferred its consciousness and spirit into its newly formed smaller body. Ha ha ha. Finally, I can leave. The Nine-Tails laughed maniacally, though only in its mind. It dared not express its excitement openly, knowing full well Takuya would mock it endlessly, and worse, spread the story far and wide. Wait. How do I even leave? Mid-laugh, the Nine-Tails suddenly realized a problem. Even though the smaller body was formed from its chakra, the ceiling space wasn't something to be trifled with. Leaving wouldn't be so easy. And what about Kushina? If she encountered danger, what would happen then? The smaller form wasn't meant for combat, using up its chakra would cause it to vanish. The Nine-Tails' smugness evaporated, replaced by a serious expression. While it craved freedom and yearned to roam freely, the thought of Kushina suffering because of it was unacceptable. What about Kushina? Takuya, noticing the Nine-Tails' worried gaze, smiled approvingly. Not bad. It's rare for you to think about Kushina. Humphrey, as if. The Nine-Tails turned its head sharply, its face flushed. Takuya fought the urge to laugh, knowing the Nine-Tails would explode if he did. Don't act so aloof. You're all bark and no bite. Kushina treats you like family, and deep down, you feel the same about her. I don't. The Nine-Tails remained stubborn, though it couldn't deny the warmth it felt. Aside from the Sage of Six Paths, no one had ever treated it like family before. Kushina was the first. Without another word, Takuya grabbed the Nine-Tails by the scruff of its neck, lifting it into the air. The Nine-Tails was stunned. A few seconds later, it began thrashing wildly, roaring, "You wretched brat! How dare you!" Takuya tilted his head slightly. The Nine-Tails immediately went quiet. Go on, I love seeing you act all high and mighty. Takuya teased. Do you think I'm stupid? The Nine-Tails rolled its eyes dramatically. Takuya chuckled but decided not to push its buttons further. Alright, settle down. I'll help you leave. As for Kushina's safety, you don't need to worry. Even if your smaller body is outside, your consciousness and spirit can always return to the ceiling space to aid Kushina in battle. Can the smaller body replenish its chakra? Yes, but it's a hassle. If you're brave enough to ask Snowy for help, be my guest. Never mind. Forget I asked. Still so timid. Looks like Snowy's lessons stuck. Takuya recalled how the Nine-Tails had once ogled Snowy, only to be beaten into submission. It had learned its lesson after a few thrashings. Lifting the small Nine-Tails, Takuya skillfully loosened the ceiling space's restraints, carrying it out before resealing the barrier. Kushina had already unlocked most of the seal long ago, but an additional layer had been added later to prevent the main body from interfering with the smaller form. Ha ha ha. I'm finally free. The Nine-Tails burst into laughter as it stepped into the real world. In the living room, Kushina face-palmed helplessly, while Snowy shot the Nine-Tails a condescending look. Takuya couldn't help but laugh. Keep laughing. Why'd you stop? The Nine-Tails froze mid-laugh as it noticed Snowy's disdainful gaze. Its entire body stiffened. This is wonderful, Nine-Tails. You can finally roam outside. Kushina exclaimed, beaming as she scooped the smaller Nine-Tails into her arms and nuzzled it affectionately. Ahem. The Nine-Tails cleared its throat, feigning nonchalance. Well, of course. Do you even know who I am? I'm the mighty Nine-Tails. Though the constant cuddling felt a bit awkward, the Nine-Tails decided it wasn't worth making a fuss about. After all, it was free now. By the way, are you two the only ones here? The Nine-Tails' large eyes darted around the room. Why do you ask? Kushina replied, puzzled. Are you looking for someone else? Yes. There's something important I need to discuss. Get Nawaki and Minato here, quickly. Minato and Nawaki? What was the Nine Tails up to? Seeing its eyes practically glowing with eagerness, Kushina turned to Takuya in confusion. He shrugged, equally curious. Well, if it's urgent, let's call them over. Takuya said, pulling out Minato's special kunai and infusing it with chakra. At the Hokage's office, Tsunade was busy reviewing documents. As the new fourth Hokage, she was determined to keep everything running smoothly on her first day. Nawaki and Minato, serving as her guards, were stationed diligently outside her office. When Minato sensed the kunai's signal, he glanced at Nawaki, silently asking him to hold down the fort. Knocking on the office door, he waited for Tsunade's acknowledgement. Come in. Tsunade called. Minato entered, bowing respectfully. Hokage-sama, Takuya is requesting me. May I leave briefly? Without looking up, Tsunade grabbed a file and tossed it to Minato. Go ahead. You and Nawaki have worked hard. Deliver this file to Takuya while you're at it. Yes, ma'am. Taking the file, Minato exited the office and signaled Nawaki. Together, they left the Hokage's building. Takuya, what's the matter? Wait, is that the Nine Tails? Upon arriving at Takuya's home, Minato froze, staring at the small Nine Tails nestled in Kushina's arms. It's me. The Nine Tails declared proudly. You're just in time. I've got something important for us to do. It added, addressing both Minato and Nawaki. 5 minutes later, Minato and Nawaki sat at the table, utterly bewildered, each holding a hand of cards. Across from them, the Nine Tails glared impatiently. Well? Play already. What are you waiting for? Are you underestimating me? So, this urgent matter was to play cards? Sharing a helpless glance, Minato and Nawaki tried to process the absurdity. The Nine Tails, meanwhile, was fully immersed, exuding the energy of a seasoned gambler. Boom. Full house. Pay up. The Nine Tails cackled, slamming its tiny paw on the table. You two are terrible at this. You'll never beat me. There's no saving this fox. Minato and Nawaki thought in unison, defeated by the sight of the self-proclaimed gambling fox. Chapter 514, Minato, I wanted to go easy, but the Nine Tails insists on losing. Dealing with Tsunade was already exhausting, and now there was a gambling-obsessed Nine Tails to worry about. All Takuya could do was hope the fox wouldn't team up with Tsunade. If the gambling fox, the big spender Tsunade, and the clueless Nawaki got together for a game of cards, the scene would probably devolve into an all-out animal brawl. To make matters worse, Kushina, bored and with nothing better to do, had joined the fray, going so far as to act as the Nine Tails strategist, advising it on its moves. Ignoring the lively chaos in the living room, Takuya stepped aside and opened the file Minato had delivered. Even though the Nine Tails and Kushina seemed full of confidence, Takuya knew that in less than half an hour, all their money would inevitably end up in Minato's hands. Never underestimate the Yellow Flash's ability to count cards. No matter how well the Nine Tails started, no matter how much advice Kushina gave, and no matter how much help Nawaki received, they were destined to lose against Minato. What's this? Inside the file was an appointment letter and an official seal. Takuya stared at the appointment letter for a moment, his expression twitching. It was an official notice appointing him as the Hokage's advisor. Tsunade really doesn't hold back, does she? She had only just taken office and was already shaking things up, disregarding the frameworks left by the third Hokage. But then again, Tsunade wasn't like Minato from the original timeline. Minato had always relied on the third Hokage or his trusted advisors to guide his actions. Tsunade, on the other hand, had already consolidated power in her hands. She could act freely, without fear of opposition, so long as her decisions didn't harm the village or its interests. Fine, I'll take it. Hokage's advisor it is. It was a position with status, respect, and very little actual responsibility. He'd only have to answer to Tsunade directly, without getting dragged into the mess of the Elder Council. As long as I don't end up in that nightmare of a council, this is fine. Stowing the letter and seal, Takuya turned his thoughts to what needed to be addressed next. The first priority was the looming threat of war. Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Clouds Village had been eyeing Hidden Leaf Village for years, and both villages were militarized and prepared for conflict. There was a good chance they'd declare war as soon as their delegations left Hidden Leaf Village. The village was still vulnerable and far from ready to handle a full-scale attack. Next on the list was dealing with Denzo. Denzo had been allowed to run amok for long enough. Takuya was tired of him periodically causing trouble. It was time to remove him from the equation permanently. And then there was the issue of Madara Uchiha and Black Zetsu. Compared to everything else, this was the real headache. The biggest obstacle was Nagato. Even if Takuya wanted to extend a hand to the Akatsuki, there were too many complications. First, Nagato's heart was marked with a curse seal placed by Madara and Black Zetsu, allowing them to control or kill him at will. Second, Conan and Yahiko were deeply tied to Nagato. The three of them had been through too much together, and their destinies were intertwined. Rescuing Nagato was virtually impossible. Madara and Black Zetsu wouldn't allow it. And even if Takuya could pull Conan and Yahiko away, they'd never abandon Nagato. Then there was Obito. Obito had already been captured. The question was when he would fully succumb to Madara's influence and don the mask to pursue his world-ending plans. Obito's issues revolved around Rin Nohara. Takuya couldn't keep Kakashi and Rin apart in hopes of avoiding Obito's corruption. That would only put Rin in greater danger, as Madara and Black Zetsu could kill her at any moment to push Obito over the edge. If Obito watched from the sidelines as others lived happily while he was manipulated by grief and rage, his descent into darkness would be inevitable. Damn Uchihas and their extreme emotions. Shaking his head, Takuya decided to set these problems aside for now. The immediate focus was on preparing for war and eliminating Denzo. Madara's infinite Tsukimi plan could wait. If necessary, Takuya could expose the truth to the world and see how Madara managed to adapt. Pay up, Kushina. But you've already lost 300,000 Ryo. You still owe me 2.7 million Ryo. Just add another 30,000 and keep going. The Ninetales, having gone all in with its initial good luck, was now on a losing streak. Minato was raking in the winnings, and even Nawaki had managed to turn a profit. The Ninetales, however, was spiraling. The more it lost, the more desperate it became, which only worsened its gameplay. Its money was practically flying out of its paws. There's no saving this fox. Ignoring the escalating chaos, Takuya picked up Snowy and headed upstairs. Kushina, make sure someone brings food later. Got it. Just let me finish a couple of hands. Kushina replied absent-mindedly, her eyes glued to the Ninetales cards. Takuya sighed. They've all lost it. Brat. Don't you dare leave. Play against me until dawn. Meanwhile, Minato, despite his winnings, looked increasingly uneasy. He had tried to go easy on the Ninetales, but the fox was relentless in handing him money. As the pile of winnings grew, Minato started worrying the Ninetales might snap and attack them. Finally, Takuya decided to call for backup. He sent Snowy to fetch Tsunade. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, Tsunade stormed into the room, sending Nawaki and Minato scrambling for cover. Unsurprisingly, all the money on the table ended up in Tsunade's pockets. Kushina, clutching the Ninetales, bolted in fear as Tsunade's fury filled the room. Seriously, can't you show some dignity? Watching Tsunade smugly count her winnings on the couch, Takuya couldn't help but fire a few jabs her way. Chapter 515, Tsunade's first big move, a census of shinobi faced with Takuya's sarcasm. Tsunade remained unfazed, happily counting her money. However, she still grumbled, cut it out. Not everyone can live like you, making money from missions and happily running a hot pot business to keep their pockets full. Wrong. Takuya corrected her with mock righteousness. What I'm most proud of is having a rich lady willing to take care of me. Tsunade. Why does this money suddenly feel less satisfying? Why can't someone pay to take care of me? The thought stung. Damn brat, always poking at my sore spots. Shooting Takuya a fierce glare, Tsunade gave up on counting her cash, stuffing it away in frustration. Tomorrow, we're supposed to meet with the other villages to discuss the matter of perfect Jinchuriki. Have you thought about what you're going to say? All 5 great villages possess tailed beasts and were keen to cultivate perfect Jinchuriki. Even Hidden Mist Village, which was still chasing after the 3 tails and 6 tails, was desperate to secure the method. Even if it meant being taken advantage of by Hidden Leaf Village, they couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Takuya smiled slightly, showing little concern. I already have an idea. We might even use this to accelerate the village's recovery. You're thinking of selling it for money? Tsunade perked up, her interest piqued. Since taking over at midday, she'd been overwhelmed by how dire Hidden Leaf Village's finances were. The Second Shinobi War had barely ended before the Third Shinobi War broke out. Hidden Leaf Village had been caught fighting Hidden Mist Village, only to be stabbed in the back by Hidden Sand Village. The village's resources and manpower were severely depleted. After reviewing the treasury, Tsunade knew the truth: the village was broke. If they could rake in a fortune through this, she was all for it. We're not selling anything. Don't be so fixated on money. Takuya gave her an exasperated look. Has she fallen into a money pit? I'll handle this. You focus on everything else. Also, tomorrow, bring Shikashage Nara to me. I have a task for him. What kind of task? The Inoshikacho trio had always been loyal to the Hokage, working exclusively under their command. Tsunade could mobilize their family's strength without hesitation. A census. Takuya's eyes narrowed. Don't you think the clans have been too secretive? They hide their numbers, including how many shinobi they have. That's unacceptable. The Uchiha, Sarutobi, Shimura, Hyuga, Inoshikacho, every clan is hiding something. Your priority is to conduct a full census and get every shinobi officially registered. You're serious about this? Tsunade frowned. This kind of move was bound to provoke backlash from the clans. It was unprecedented, and while clans were known to hoard resources, it was something the village had always tolerated. To overturn that precedent and impose new rules would undoubtedly cause waves. I'm not just serious, it's a necessity. Takuya shook his head firmly. Tomorrow, I'll handle the Jinchuriki negotiations. You focus on the census. Start by meeting with the clan heads, Uchiha, Inoshikacho, and the rest. Start with them and gradually expand. And if there's resistance, push through it. Begin with the Uchiha and Inoshikacho, then move on to the smaller clans. For the larger clans, if they resist, leak information suggesting they're stockpiling soldiers for their own gain. Stir up rumors. The angry villagers will handle the rest. Fight fire with fire. The same tactics used by the third Hokage, Koharu, and their allies to control people could now be turned against them. As for the Sarutobi clan, you can speak directly to the third Hokage. After all, they've hidden the most. We'll give you a heads up first. If you cooperate, great. If not, don't say we didn't warn you when things get ugly. The Uchiha would have no choice but to comply. With Fugaku cleaning house in his own clan, they were already moving toward reconciliation. The Inoshikacho families had always been aligned with the Hokage. With the third no longer a factor, they had no choice but to rely on Tsunade. Once the Uchiha and Inoshikacho were sorted, the smaller clans would follow suit. The biggest challenge would be the Hyuga. The Hyuga had always resisted village interference in their clan affairs, guarding their influence jealously. The Uchiha can't escape. They need you. The same goes for the Inoshikacho. Once they're dealt with, move on to the smaller clans and save the Hyuga for last. They'll be the toughest to crack, but the hardest bones are best saved for last. Tsunade, the shinobi world isn't going to stay peaceful for long. If you trust me, then don't delay. This needs to be done as quickly as possible. Tsunade knew he was right. A Hokage's authority was strongest at the start of their term. This was the perfect time to implement such a sweeping change. Delay would only make things harder. I understand. After a moment of contemplation, Tsunade nodded. She trusted Takuya, and he trusted her. Takuya wouldn't suggest something like this without reason. The clans had indeed been pushing the limits of their autonomy. The Sarutobi, Shimura, Koharu, and others had grown particularly excessive in their influence. Tsunade had been itching to address the problem for a while. A census wouldn't harm the village. It would simply bring hidden resources to light. If some clans ended up embarrassed, that was their problem. Take the Sarutobi, for instance. During Hidden Leaf Village's early days, they weren't even considered a major clan. Now, their numbers were so high that any revelation would shake the village. People would start to question how they grew so much without sufficient resources. The answer was obvious, the third Hokage's favoritism. The Sarutobi, Shimura, Koharu, and others wouldn't escape scrutiny either. I'm off. Tsunade stood, ready to act. She knew her first step would be to speak with the third Hokage, Fugaku Uchiha, and Choza Kimiki. It was better to set expectations early. Chapter 516, I hesitated for a moment, and the Hokage turned on me? It's not the opposition to an idea that's dangerous, it's when allies suddenly shift sides that chaos ensues. At the Sarutobi clan estate, the third Hokage had officially retired and was now enjoying his golden years. Dressed in a loose robe, a pipe dangling from his mouth, he sat under the eaves, playing a game of shogi by himself. Who would have thought that the former Hokage, much like the Nara clan, would indulge in such contemplative activities? Normally, playing shogi alone was an exercise in frustration, but today his peace was interrupted, not by the front door but by the sound of someone vaulting over the wall. Tsunade, ever impatient, had chosen a direct route into the estate. The Anbu station to protect the third Hokage, upon recognizing her, wisely pretended she wasn't there. Is that you, Tsunade? The third Hokage removed his pipe and placed it on the shogi board. Old man, I have something I need to discuss with you. Tsunade, always forthright, plopped down cross-legged on the veranda without preamble. Unlike other Hokage, even after assuming office, Tsunade refused to wear the traditional robes. Instead, she stuck to her combat shirt, draped with a long white coat, her preferred color after Takuya had relentlessly mocked her old green one. Something to discuss? The third Hokage looked puzzled. As Hokage, Tsunade had the authority to make decisions without consulting him. Unless what she was planning would have a significant impact, or worse, involved revisiting old grudges. That thought made him uneasy. Tsunade, we agreed, no settling old scores. This had been their arrangement, leave the past in the past. While Denzo was an exception, everything else was off limits. In return, the elders Koharu Utatane and Hamor Midokado would relinquish control over key departments like the medical corps. But if Tsunoda was planning to go back on that agreement, he would have to intervene. It's not about that, Tsunoda replied, waving dismissively. Sensei, I'm just here to give you a heads up. Tomorrow, I'll be summoning all the clan heads to the Hokage's office to discuss a census of Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi. It seems that over the years, some clans have forgotten the village's foundation. I won't go into details about their heritage or traditions, but hiding shinobi? That's crossing the line. The third Hokage froze. A census. While not technically revisiting old issues, the implications were enormous. Yet, there was no flaw in her reasoning. It was something the Hokage had every right to do. The Saratobi clan, of course, wouldn't be exempt. Is this truly necessary? The third Hokage sighed, knowing he couldn't outright oppose her. It's necessary. Tsunoda's tone was firm. This is only about shinobi who aren't on record. I don't care where they're trained, what resources are used, or how they're raised. I only want a complete count of the village's shinobi. Even privately trained retainers need to be documented. Isn't that just semantics? You claim not to care about the details, but once the numbers are out, others will start asking questions. The third Hokage rubbed his temples, already feeling a headache coming on. If Tsunoda had been planning to revisit old grudges, he could have stopped her. But this... How could he oppose something as straightforward as a census? If you've got nothing to hide, why are you nervous? Unless you're challenging the authority of the Hokage? After puffing on his pipe in silence, the third Hokage finally spoke. There will be significant resistance. I'm aware. Tsunoda replied confidently. Uchiha and the Inoshikacho families will start first. They won't refuse. As for the other clans, we'll take it one step at a time. Sensei, I'm here to let you know beforehand because I hope you make the right choice. This is for the good of the village's development, and it won't harm the clan's interests. Things will remain as they are. The third Hokage remained silent. As Tsunoda rose to leave, she added, I hope you'll understand my perspective. Some truths can't be hidden forever. Once again, Tsunoda vaulted over the wall, clapping the dust off her hands before addressing the Anbu nearby. Send word to the Uchiha clan head and Choza Akimiki. I need to see them at the Hokage's office. Yes, Hokage-sama. From the empty street came the faint reply of an Anbu operative. By the time Tsunoda returned to her office, Fugaku Uchiha and Choza Akimiki were already waiting. Fugaku sat stiffly, trying to contain his excitement. Tsunoda summoning him could only mean one thing, the Uchiha were finally being welcomed back into the fold. Choza, on the other hand, looked confused. He couldn't fathom why Tsunoda would call for him at such a time. Tsunoda, what's the occasion? Choza, ever jovial, chuckled and broke the ice. Fugaku, meanwhile, sat upright, serious as always. Choza might act casually, but Fugaku wasn't about to let his guard down. It's an important matter. Tsunoda began, her expression serious. I need to conduct a census of all shinobi in the village, and I want the Inoshikacho families to lead by example. A census. In Hidden Leaf Village, shinobi were divided into two categories, clan shinobi and civilians. Civilians were already accounted for, as every one of them was registered. Clan shinobi, however, were a different story. Many clans maintained their own training programs and raised shinobi entirely within their estates, keeping them off the village's official records. These hidden forces weren't uncommon. Choza's plump face twitched, his usual smile faltering. This was a bombshell. Look, Tsunoda, it's not that I don't want to help, but I understand the implications. Tsunoda interrupted. But this needs to be done. Fugaku, what about the Uchiha? No problem. Fugaku replied immediately. The Uchiha were desperate to rebuild their reputation and regain trust. Fugaku wouldn't pass up an opportunity to cooperate. As long as Tsunoda wasn't asking for their sacred techniques, the Uchiha were more than willing to comply. Besides, the Uchiha had no allies among the other clans. They were used to being isolated and had no reason to care about stepping on toes. Choza hesitated, watching Fugaku's swift agreement. The contrast was striking, and not in his favor. Tsunoda, please address me as Hokage-sama. Tsunoda's tone turned cold, her earlier patience evaporating. If Choza wouldn't cooperate willingly, she had no qualms about resorting to formalities. The Inoshikacho alliance would do well to maintain its neutrality and keep its distance from her office. Choza gawked, stunned by the sudden shift. I only hesitated for a moment, was that really necessary? Realizing there was no escape, he sighed and rubbed his face. The Inoshikacho families will cooperate with the Hokage's orders. As Takuya had predicted, Fugaku was eager to comply, while the Inoshikacho families had no choice but to follow suit. "Thank you, Choza." Tsunoda's expression softened slightly. Though Choza's reluctance was obvious, at least he had agreed. That was enough for now. Chapter 517, Hidden Leaf Village may be weak, but its strength is unprecedented. Tsunoda's abrupt decision to turn on him had been unexpected. She hadn't even given Choza Akimeki time to prepare. Getting old. Choza muttered to himself, hands clasped behind his back as he shook his head and left the Hokage's office. After Choza's departure, Fugaku Uchiha hesitated for a moment before asking cautiously, "Hokage-sama, do you think that might have made him uncomfortable?" "That's not an issue," Tsunoda replied flatly. "He's always been that way, which is why he retired early and chose to live a quiet life. Besides, given the position the Inoshikacho alliance is in, he really didn't have a choice." Tsunoda's gaze turned sharp as she shifted her focus. "Now, about the Uchiha." The Inoshikacho alliance's stance, coupled with Choza's own tendencies, made it clear he had no appetite for political conflict. Yet his habit of offering advice, always from the perspective of the third Hokage's generation, only fueled Tsunoda's irritation. When faced with a situation that left no room for negotiation, his behavior made it impossible for her not to show her displeasure. Fugaku, sensing Tsunoda's shift in attention, stiffened slightly. "Hokage-sama, please rest assured. I'll address the internal issues within the Uchiha clan immediately." Before he could finish, Tsunoda cut him off. "Enough. It's just a matter of perspective. You're all from the same clan. There's no need to tear each other apart. Focus on changing their mindset instead." Fugaku blinked, startled. He had intended to purge the Hawks within the Uchiha clan as a gesture of loyalty to the new regime. Tsunoda herself had implied this was necessary to ease the tensions between the village and his clan. But now, she seemed to have changed her mind. "Are the Hawks really the Uchiha's problem?" Tsunoda asked rhetorically. "No, the issue runs far deeper than that. If the underlying issues weren't resolved, eliminating the Hawks would achieve nothing. It would only weaken the Uchiha without addressing the root causes of their unrest." While Tsunoda didn't particularly like the Hawks, she saw their value. At the very least, they were a force to be reckoned with if properly managed. Unlike the third Hokage, who might have insisted on wiping out dissent, Tsunoda believed in her ability to control the situation. With Fugaku as her anchor within the clan, she was confident that the Hawks wouldn't pose a significant threat. Her focus returned to Fugaku, whose typically stoic demeanor faltered slightly under her scrutiny. Tsunoda's expression softened just a fraction, though her thoughts were more critical. Who would have thought this quiet, serious man could be so ruthless, toward his own people, no less? "You were planning to cull the Hawks entirely, weren't you?" Tsunoda asked pointedly. Fugaku hesitated but nodded slightly. "I assume that was what you wanted, Hokage-sama." Tsunoda scoffed. "Do you want half your clan dead?" The Uchiha were divided into three factions, the clan leader's faction, the Hawks, and the Doves. The clan leader's faction was the largest and strongest, followed by the Hawks. Purging the Hawks would be a costly endeavor, leaving the clan significantly weakened. "I don't want that, Hokage-sama. I just thought." Tsunoda leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other and tapping her finger on the desk. "I'm the fourth Hokage now, Fugaku. I won't tolerate internal strife within the village. Handle the Uchiha's issues yourself. As for the Hawks, leave them for now, they may still prove useful." Fugaku was stunned. He had prepared himself for significant losses within the clan, but now Tsunoda was suggesting the Hawks be spared. "Hokage-sama, those individuals are ambitious." Tsunoda interrupted him with a cold laugh. "I wouldn't keep them around if I were worried about what they might do. Hidden Leaf Village may seem weak right now, but that's only on the surface. The village's actual strength is at an all-time high. What could a handful of Hawks possibly accomplish? On the surface, Hidden Leaf Village might appear vulnerable, but a closer examination revealed a village at its peak. The village had a vast base of shinobi. Its elite forces alone were enough to deter most enemies. The elders of the third Hokage's generation were still alive. While their abilities may have diminished somewhat, they remained formidable. The next generation, led by the Sannin, was fully intact and thriving. Add to that the likes of Kakashi Hatake, who commanded the Anbu, and rising stars like Takeya, Kushina, and Minato. With such a lineup, Hidden Leaf Village was a force to be reckoned with. Against this backdrop, the Uchiha Hawks were hardly a concern. "Tell them this," Tsunoda instructed, her tone icy. "Takeya's been irritated with them for a long time. If they want to make a scene, they're welcome to try. He'd be more than happy to deal with them." Fugaku's face tightened. Takeya's reputation preceded him, and anyone who crossed him would be asking for trouble. The Hawks wouldn't even be able to stir up a ripple, let alone a storm. Shaking his head, Fugaku decided it wasn't worth the headache. His focus would be on keeping the Hawks in check and preventing them from dragging the entire clan into trouble. Rising to his feet, Fugaku bowed deeply. Hokage-sama, I will convey your words exactly as you've said them. I'll also ensure that those within the clan are kept in line. If the village ever needs them, they'll be ready to fight on the front lines. Tsunade nodded, satisfied. There's no glory in turning on your own people, Fugaku. Let them prove their worth when the time comes. Use them wisely. Fugaku understood. Ambition wouldn't be quelled by threats or temporary incentives. The best way to deal with such individuals was to gradually wear them down, turning their ambitions into contributions for the village. And if some of them chose to defect? Fugaku didn't care. For the sake of the Uchiha, he would handle whatever came next. Chapter 518, Soft and Hard Tactics. Fugaku Uchiha's mastery over the Hawks. No matter the differences in belief, never underestimate the pride of the Uchiha. Betraying the village casually? That's not the Uchiha way. Let's see how it goes. Tsunade said, waving a hand to dismiss Fugaku Uchiha. Go back, rest up, and get ready. There's a lot to handle tomorrow. Leaving the Hokage's office, Fugaku returned to the Uchiha compound and immediately called for a clan meeting. When the announcement was made, all eligible members gathered in the sealed chamber within the clan's shrine. Everyone present knew Fugaku had been to see the Hokage, and when he arrived, all eyes turned to him. Under their scrutiny, Fugaku walked calmly to his seat, sat cross-legged, and swept a cold, calculating gaze over his clansmen. Today, I met with the Hokage. Fugaku began, his tone calm yet commanding. The Hokage has agreed to lift the surveillance on our Uchiha clan, restore the elders' rights that belong to us, and ensure the police force will operate without interference. The room fell silent for a moment, and then cheers erupted, filling the sealed chamber. This is fantastic. We knew the fourth Hokage wouldn't let us down. Finally, no more being watched all the time. I was so sick of those outsiders and their prejudice. This feels great. Just as at last. The Uchiha in attendance, regardless of their faction, were overjoyed. For them, this was monumental. The constant weight of suspicion and monitoring had finally been lifted. Tsunade hadn't betrayed their trust. She had accepted their loyalty and treated them with fairness, unlike the discrimination they had faced under the third Hokage and his allies. While his clansmen celebrated, Fugaku remained stoic. He was just as pleased, but as the clan head, he couldn't show it. Now, there are some matters we must discuss. Settle down, everyone. Raising a hand, Fugaku gestured for silence. Slowly, the room quieted. Today is a good day for the Uchiha, he said, his gaze turning toward the hawkish members of the clan. His voice dropped, cold and deliberate. The Hokage has accepted our loyalty and given us what we've asked for. But the question lingered in the air, and everyone instinctively turned to look at the Hawks. While the Uchiha had been accepted, they knew the clan had to show sincerity in return. Otherwise, the privileges granted today could vanish tomorrow, replaced by even harsher suppression. The Hawks became the focus of everyone's attention, a thorn in the side of the entire clan. Some Hawks looked visibly uneasy, while their elder representative remained calm. Clan head, fellow clansmen. The elder began, standing to address the room. The Hokage has indeed given us what we sought. As per our agreement, we must now show our sincerity. However, I ask the clan head to spare the younger members of our faction. They are still children, driven only by their love for the Uchiha and their desire for a better future. If sincerity is required, then let us elders shoulder that responsibility. That should be enough to satisfy the Hokage. The elders' words carried weight. While the Hawks were known for their ambition, their motivation had always been rooted in their desire to see the Uchiha thrive. Now that their goals had been achieved, their existence had become awkward and precarious. Still, the elder displayed admirable resolve, ready to take full responsibility to protect the younger generation. No way. I won't agree to this. If someone has to sacrifice themselves for the Uchiha, then let it be me. Some younger members of the Hawks stood up, their eyes red with emotion, shouting their willingness to take the fall. Witnessing this, the other factions, those aligned with the clan head and the doves, were left with mixed feelings. They, too, were Uchiha, united in their desire for the clan's well-being. Yet the situation had escalated to this point. They wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. The Uchiha needed to prove their loyalty to Tsunade, and that required a show of sincerity. Enough. Fugaku's voice cut through the tension, his expression unchanged by the emotional outbursts around him. When the clan head spoke, silence fell. Clan head. Some of the doves and loyalists looked at Fugaku with pleading eyes, hoping he would show leniency. Fugaku ignored their silent requests, crossing his arms over his chest. His gaze turned icy as he addressed the room. Remember this, we are Uchiha. And the Uchiha have their pride. Those words silenced even the doves. Their appeals died unspoken as Fugaku's unwavering resolve washed over them. The hawks straightened their backs, bracing for the worst. No matter what punishment Fugaku decreed, they were ready to accept it. We are fortunate that the fourth Hokage bears no ill will toward the Uchiha. Fugaku continued, his tone heavy with meaning. Just moments ago, she told me personally that the village needs stability, and so does the Uchiha. We should not be so foolish as to turn our blades on our own kin. Your sincerity will be shown in other ways. Fugaku paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Finally, he added, the Hokage will not allow any needless sacrifice. The room was stunned. The hawks had braced themselves for a purge, but instead, they were being spared. Even the doves and loyalists seemed shocked by the turn of events. What the clan head means is, prepare yourselves. Fugaku interrupted. All of you. When war breaks out, the Uchiha will lead the charge and fight on the front lines on behalf of the Hokage. The sudden shift left the room reeling. They had expected a bloodbath, but instead, they were being tasked with proving their worth in a more constructive way. Tsunada's stance was clear, she wanted no internal conflicts and no unnecessary losses among the Uchiha. After a brief silence, cheers erupted once more. Some even shed tears, overwhelmed by gratitude toward the Hokage. As the room calmed, Fugaku raised his hand again, calling for order. Chapter 519, Indirect Apprenticeship, Hidden Intentions Behind the Offer. We still have tasks assigned to the Uchiha by the Hokage that need to be addressed. Fugaku began, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled Uchiha. Tomorrow, the Hokage will convene a meeting at the Hokage office, gathering representatives from all clans to announce the decision to conduct a census of all clan-affiliated shinobi. Regardless of the clan, everyone will be required to cooperate with the village and report all their shinobi. Nothing can be hidden. The Uchiha will stand on the front lines, supporting the Hokage. Do you all understand? Privileges are never given for free. Accepting benefits means showing proportional value in return. As a result, the Uchiha must take the lead in this initiative. Fortunately, the Uchiha didn't have to worry about offending anyone else. After all, the clan had no allies in Hidden Leaf Village. Not a single major or minor clan, even those on the verge of extinction, was willing to associate with the Uchiha. This underscored just how isolated the clan had become within the village. Now that Tsunada had extended an olive branch, Fugaku intended to hold on tightly. Tasks that might be troublesome for other clans pose no such difficulty for the Uchiha. If a census was required, so be it. The Uchiha had nothing to hide. Clan head, what about the gray-robed shinobi? Someone asked. These so-called gray-robed shinobi referred to clan-trained operatives, akin to secret soldiers, used for missions too sensitive or clandestine for public involvement. Like other clans, the Uchiha also train their own. Fugaku's expression hardened. Report every single one of them. They must all be registered. Our only job is to cooperate fully with the Hokage. The room went quiet. Though some members looked displeased, none voiced outright objections. Begrudgingly, they accepted the decision. After all, Tsunada had extended significant benefits to the Uchiha, and the price seemed fair. Why worry about upsetting other clans? The Uchiha had long since stopped caring about such things. The ones truly feeling the pressure were the other clans, especially the Hyuga. The Hyuga clan, under the guidance of the third Hokage, had often clashed with the Uchiha, vying for the title of the most powerful clan in the village. As a result, the Hyuga had plenty of secrets they wouldn't want revealed. With Tsunada's decision, the Hyuga would undoubtedly face a difficult time. While it wasn't outright confiscation, forcing hidden resources into the open would certainly sting. Do you think Hayashi Hyuga might faint from the stress? Someone joked. Laughter rippled through the chamber as the Uchiha relished the thought of their rival clan's impending discomfort. When the laughter subsided, Fugaku spoke again. Now, on to the second matter. The room quieted as everyone's attention sharpened. I plan to find suitable mentors for Shizue and Itachi. Fugaku announced. The mention of Shizue Uchiha and Itachi Uchiha immediately piqued interest. Both were acknowledged as prodigies, brimming with talent at a young age. Within the Uchiha, they were viewed as rising stars, far surpassing the reputation of contemporaries like Kakashi. While capable mentors certainly existed, few had been willing to take on either of them, leaving the matter unresolved for some time. Now, it seemed Fugaku had made a decision. The sixth elder, who had personally raised Shizue after the boy's parents passed away, hesitated for a moment before cautiously asking, Clan head, may I ask who you've chosen as their mentor? The elder's wariness stemmed from Shizue's unique status. As the descendant of Kagami Uchiha, A figure revered yet controversial within the clan, Shizue's position was both significant and precarious. I've decided that they'll study under Mikoto. Mikoto? Mikoto Uchiha. The room buzzed with surprise. Why Mikoto? It wasn't that Mikoto was unqualified, on the contrary, her prowess as a jonin was well recognized within both the Uchiha and Hidden Leaf village. Despite her current focus on administrative duties, her reputation as the Uchiha prodigy had never waned. However, it still seemed unexpected for Fugaku to entrust both Shizue and Itachi to her. Clan head, is Mikoto truly the best choice? Someone ventured. You don't understand anything. The sixth elder snapped, irritation flashing across his face. Fugaku's decision is well considered. Mikoto is more than capable. Or are you implying you're stronger than her? Or better qualified in any way? He paused for effect, then added, and if you think Mikoto isn't enough, let me remind you that she has the backing of Yagami Takuya. Do you believe you're stronger than him? The room fell silent. The elder's explanation clicked into place. Ah. So this is a means to another end, is it? Someone murmured. Fugaku had long sought to solidify ties with Takuya Yagami, leveraging Mikoto's relationship with him. Though Takuya maintained a neutral distance, his connection to Mikoto served as a buffer against any potential animosity toward the Uchiha. By involving Mikoto in training Shizue and Itachi, Fugaku ensured a closer link between the two families. Even if Takuya refused outright involvement, Mikoto's role could naturally lead to his indirect influence. This move wasn't just strategic, it was brilliant. Mikoto's strength is evident. Fugaku said, his tone firm. And if her guidance isn't enough, she has someone even stronger to back her up. That's sufficient. Pausing for a moment, he added, I'll personally explain this to Mikoto. Your task is to focus on supporting the village as we agreed. With that, Fugaku concluded the meeting. After the meeting, Fugaku didn't leave immediately. Instead, he called for Shizue and Itachi to be brought to him. The two young prodigies, ready to retire for the night, were soon ushered in, arms laden with gifts prepared by Fugaku. Both boys stood there, confused, clutching the heavy bundles. They wanted to ask why the clan head, Itachi's father, had summoned them so late, but the stoic look on Fugaku's face silenced their questions. Whatever this was about, it was clearly significant. After all, today had already proven to be an extraordinary day for Hidden Leaf Village, and for the Uchiha. Chapter 520, Mikoto Uchiha becomes a teacher by accident. Even though it was already late at night, the streets of Hidden Leaf Village were still bustling with celebrating villagers. The streets were adorned with colorful decorations, and even visitors from other villages joined in the festivities. For the Uchiha, who were tasked with maintaining order in the village, there was no time to rest. Fugaku, as clan head, kept his speeches short during clan meetings to avoid delaying their duties. The Uchiha police force bore the responsibility of ensuring peace during the celebrations. Any disorder would inevitably fall on their shoulders. As a member of the Uchiha, Mikoto was no exception. She was still working late into the night, despite her husband, Takuya, having repeatedly encouraged her to resign and take it easy. However, Mikoto always refused, and after several attempts, Takuya had stopped trying to persuade her. Lady Mikoto, the clan head has asked you to go to the office. He has something to discuss. All right, I'll head there right away. Mikoto smiled politely at the messenger, tidied up her desk, and made her way to the police force headquarters. The police force was managed entirely by the Uchiha, and the clan head always served as its leader. Familiar with the layout, Mikoto soon arrived at Fugaku's office. She knocked lightly on the door and waited. Come in. Hearing the reply, she opened the door and stepped inside. Clan head, you called for me this late? Oh. Mikoto trailed off as she noticed two small figures standing quietly in the office, Itachi and Shizue. Her lips curled into a smile. So, Itachi and Shizue are here too? Still not asleep? We'd like to sleep, but we don't dare. Sharing a glance, Itachi and Shizue exchanged helpless looks before bowing politely. Good evening, ma'am. Something was definitely off. Mikoto's sharp eyes scanned the office, noting the piles of neatly wrapped gift boxes. Her curiosity grew as she asked, Clan head, what's all of this about? Sitting behind his desk, Fugaku rose to his feet. Just some small tokens. Please, have a seat and make yourself comfortable. He gestured for the two boys to fetch chairs. Taking the hint, Itachi and Shizue scrambled to drag chairs that were nearly as tall as themselves. Please sit down, ma'am. Thank you. Mikoto, utterly confused, seated herself. Fugaku, not one for unnecessary politeness, had never behaved like this before. The presence of the young prodigies, the gift boxes, and the late-night summons all pointed towards something unusual. Her instincts told her this wasn't about official business but rather something personal. Is he trying to find a teacher for these two? Mikoto knew about Fugaku's intentions, even Takuya had mentioned them before. However, she also knew Takuya was unlikely to take on disciples, no matter who approached him, not even if she asked. Once Mikoto sat down, Fugaku also took his seat, motioning for the two boys to stand in attention. He then addressed Mikoto directly. Mikoto, the reason I asked you here tonight isn't about work. It's a personal matter. Just as I thought. Itachi and Shizue were at the perfect age to begin advanced training, and the clan had been debating who should mentor them. Fugaku had once considered teaching them himself but later shifted his hopes to Takuya, only to be repeatedly turned down. Mikoto sighed inwardly. She didn't want Takuya to be put in an awkward position because of her. If this is about asking Takuya to mentor them, I'm afraid it's unlikely. No, it's not that. Fugaku's face remained stoic as he interrupted her. I asked them to prepare gifts because I want you to take them on as your students. What? Mikoto blinked in disbelief. Fugaku elaborated, Itachi and Shizue have reached the age where they need proper guidance. You're fully aware of their talents, they're in no way inferior to Kakashi of the Hatake clan. I believe you're the best person to mentor them. Then, to Mikoto's shock, Fugaku stood and gave her a deep bow. Please, Mikoto. Equally stunned, Itachi and Shizue quickly followed suit, bowing deeply. Please, ma'am. By the time Mikoto stepped out of the office with two new disciples trailing behind her, she was still dazed. She couldn't quite process how she had ended up agreeing to this. Fugaku had given her every possible out and shown her the utmost respect. Faced with such sincerity, Mikoto found it impossible to refuse. As a fellow Uchiha, she genuinely wanted to see Itachi and Shizue thrive under the best mentorship possible. But now, she faced a new dilemma. How am I supposed to teach these two? She stopped in her tracks, turning to the boys. Go home and get some rest for now. I'll need some time to think about your training plan. The boys nodded obediently and headed home. Mikoto, meanwhile, returned to her own office, sitting down heavily in her chair. Even as a seasoned jonin, she felt unprepared. Teaching wasn't her forte, and her current workload left her with little spare time. But the decision was already made, she couldn't just abandon her disciples now. It was late at night by the time Mikoto finally returned home. Her mother, who had been waiting for her, immediately brought out freshly prepared food. You must be exhausted. Wash up and eat something. Her mother urged. Oh, okay. Mikoto wandered off to wash her hands, her mind still elsewhere. Her mother noticed something was off. Did you and Takuya have a fight? What? No. Then why do you look so distracted? You're scaring me. Hurry up and eat something. Work is important, but so is your health. Mom, I took on 2 disciples. That's wonderful. Wait, what? You took on disciples? It's Itachi and Shizue. The clan head insisted. I couldn't refuse, so I agreed. Her mother was floored. You're taking on students? When will you find the time? Do you even know how to mentor someone? What else can I do? They've already started calling me sensei. That's your problem to figure out. Her mother quickly excused herself, unwilling to meddle further. It wasn't that she doubted Mikoto's abilities, but knowing how busy her daughter was, she couldn't imagine how Mikoto would manage the added responsibility. And then there was the issue of teaching itself. Mikoto had no prior experience as a mentor. Seriously, how did this happen? Shaking her head, Mikoto resigned herself to the task ahead. For better or worse, she was now Itachi and Shizue's sensei, and there was no turning back. Chapter 521, Hidden Leaf Village doesn't harm its own, and Takuya doesn't betray his allies that night. Mikoto Uchiha couldn't sleep. Her mind was entirely occupied with thoughts of how to train her disciples. By the next day, she was still groggy and out of sorts. Forget it. After splashing her face with cold water, Mikoto Uchiha pulled herself together and prepared to head to work. If it doesn't work out, I'll just leave it to Takuya. He's already managing Kakashi, helping out with Shizue and Itachi shouldn't be too much trouble. Early in the morning, Takuya was summoned by members of the Anbu. As the Hokage's advisor, he yawned his way to the Hokage's office building. All the major and minor clans of Hidden Leaf Village received notice early that morning to gather at the building for a meeting. By the time Takuya arrived, the conference room was already packed. He was among the last to arrive. Scanning the room, Takuya finally found an empty seat to the right of the main seat and sat down. Directly across from him were the representatives of the Elders' Council, Koharu Udatane and Hamura Mitakato. Tsunoda hadn't completely stripped them of their positions but had taken back a significant portion of their authority. Now, these 2 advisory elders had barely any power left, only overseeing the medical department and barred from interfering in other areas. The once powerful Elders' Council had been thoroughly reduced to mere advisors under Tsunoda's rule as the 4th Hokage. Unlike before, When they meddled in everything, they now lacked the capability and the courage to interfere arbitrarily. Though they had long expected this outcome, Koharu and Homura couldn't help but look uncomfortable seeing Takuya sitting across from them. After all, Tsunade didn't listen to them. If they dared to cause trouble, there was no guarantee she wouldn't remove them entirely. Even if they were full of dissatisfaction, they could only suppress it. Do you know why this meeting was called? No idea. We'll have to wait for the Hokage to arrive to find out. I just hope it's not bad news. It was rare for Hidden Leaf Village to gather the representatives of all the ninja clans for a meeting. Many were still puzzled, and some were whispering amongst themselves, speculating about Tsunade's purpose for calling this meeting. Was this your idea? Sitting beside Takuya, Nara Shikashige, who had once again been dragged out of retirement to take the heat, looked utterly resigned. I'm retired. Retired. How many times do I have to say it? Whenever something important came up, they always pulled him back in. After Akimaki Choza had a rough time with Tsunade, he returned and announced the news before promptly dragging Shikashige into the fray. Since Akimaki Choza wouldn't handle it and Nara Shikaka wasn't yet ready to take on the responsibility, Shikashige had no choice but to step up again. What do you mean, my idea? Takuya looked completely clueless. I don't know what you're talking about, but weren't you retired? Shouldn't Shikaka be handling this by now? You're too old for this kind of stress. You. This brat. If it weren't for you, would I even be sitting here? Shikashige chuckled bitterly. Although it was Tsunade's decision, Shikashige couldn't believe Takuya wasn't involved. He'd bet his life on it. He had known Tsunade since she was young, she'd never come up with so many strange ideas on her own. This was definitely Takuya's doing. Get lost. After cursing him with a laugh, Shikashige sighed. I wish Shikaka could grow up faster, like you. But that boy is still too green. If I let him take over now, I'm afraid you'd run circles around him. How could I? Takuya couldn't help but laugh. You know me, don't you? Hidden Leaf Village doesn't harm its own, and I, Takuya, would never betray my allies. Yeah, right. Every word out of your mouth is a lie. Shikashige glanced around, then leaned in closer and lowered his voice. Swear you had nothing to do with this. Of course not. Takuya replied with an innocent expression. Senior, I'm just helping Tsunade, our Hokage. Why overthink it? The Inoshikacho alliance has always been neutral. Just cooperate, and everything will be fine. Don't you agree? Didn't you just claim ignorance a moment ago? I knew it. This is your doing. Now the Inoshikacho trio would undoubtedly become the scapegoat in the eyes of the other clans. And Takuya was right, they had no choice but to side with Tsunade. If the other clans weren't happy with Tsunade's decision, they'd vent their frustration on the Inoshikacho trio. Even if the Uchiha bore the brunt of the blame, the trio would still be targeted. Because the Uchiha were seen as a clan of lunatics, most wouldn't dare provoke them. But the Inoshikacho trio? They'd be a convenient target. You're going to be the death of me. Shikashige sighed in defeat. Takuya grinned mischievously and turned away, as if to say, this has nothing to do with me. If you're upset, take it up with Tsunade. I'm just following orders. Even if you suspected this was my idea, I'll never admit it. I, Takuya, only carry out tasks as instructed. While Shikashige struggled with his headache, Fugaku Uchiha remained calm. The Uchiha clan had already pledged their loyalty to Tsunade and didn't care about being targeted or resented by other clans. Of course, Shikashige wasn't the only one feeling uneasy. The Sarutobi and Shimura clans were also grappling with their own concerns. They couldn't avoid being informed, given the third Hokage's connection to their clans. But as two of the most secretive clans in Hidden Leaf Village, they were reluctant to disclose the number of ninjas they had. Even if Tsunade didn't pursue the matter, there would be no shortage of accusations and criticisms thrown their way. During Hidden Leaf Village's founding, only the Senju, Hyuga, and Uchiha clans were considered major clans. The Sarutobi and Shimura clans were nowhere near that status, yet they suddenly had a large number of ninjas. Where did all these resources come from to train so many ninjas? Even the well-established Uchiha and Hyuga weren't this excessive. How had the Sarutobi and Shimura clans managed it? Once exposed, there'd been no hiding the truth, no matter how much they tried to cover it up. If they refused to cooperate with Tsunade and instead tried to rally other clans against her, they risked isolating themselves. Tsunade controlled everything in Hidden Leaf Village. If she systematically dealt with opposing clans one by one, by the time she turned her attention to them, there'd been no room for negotiation. So, after receiving notice from the third Hokage, the Sarutobi and Shimura clans spent a sleepless night agonizing over their options. The wait wasn't long. 5 minutes before the meeting was set to begin, Tsunade walked in, rubbing her eyes. Judging by her appearance, she hadn't rested well either. Hokage-sama. As Tsunade entered, Everyone in the room stood and greeted her. "Take your seats. No need for formalities." Waving them off, Tsunoda led her personal guard and secretary, Nara Shikaku, to the main seat and sat down. Takuya had previously suggested giving Bakura the role, but Tsunoda refused. In her view, Bakura still had a lot of room for growth. She needed to be in combat, not stuck by Tsunoda's side as a bodyguard or secretary. So the naturally passive Shikaku ended up being drafted instead. Though Shikaku wasn't strong enough to be a bodyguard, he was more than competent as a secretary. With Shikaku handling the mess of paperwork, Tsunoda could offload a significant amount of her workload. Chapter 522, Are clan ninjas not part of Hidden Leaf Village? When it's a troublesome issue, you handle it. When it's important, leave it to me. It's decided. Faced with Tsunoda's authority, Nara Shikaku had no choice but to accept the arrangement, albeit reluctantly. Fortunately, the Nara clan specialized in such matters. No matter how much work Tsunoda dumped on him, Shikaku could manage it. "Today, I've gathered everyone here to implement a small reform for the village," Tsunoda announced. She gestured for Shikaku to distribute the documents. Standing behind her, Shikaku dutifully handed out the pre-prepared files to everyone in the room. The details of the reform were clearly outlined in the documents. Just a quick read would reveal exactly what Tsunoda meant by reform. A ninja census? Many in the room looked surprised. Most of those reacting this way were representatives of smaller clans, some of which Takuya had never even heard of. These smaller clans, with their limited numbers, lacked the capacity to hide anything significant. The reform was clearly aimed at the larger and mid-sized clans. For these smaller clans, the reform had little impact, they had few members, and their ninjas were already on record. The situation was very different for certain larger clans. The representatives of the Sarutobi and Shimura clans immediately looked grim. Across from Takuya, Koharu Utatane and Hamura Midokado stared at Tsunoda in disbelief. They had heard nothing about this beforehand, not even a whisper. Even the third Hokage hadn't informed them. Seeing the document in their hands, the two elders were visibly more agitated than the Sarutobi and Shimura clan representatives. At least those clans had been briefed by the third Hokage. Koharu and Hamura, however, were entirely in the dark. "Tsunoda, no, Hokage-sama, why wasn't such an important matter discussed with us beforehand?" Koharu was the first to lose her composure, rising from her seat in protest. In response, Tsunoda spoke calmly. "It's just a minor census reform. Is it really that important? Is it really that important?" Koharu froze. After all, this wasn't a major issue for the village as a whole. It only significantly impacted the ninja clans, and even then, it was just an impact. The document made it clear, this was merely a census, with no ulterior motives involved. The purpose was straightforward. Everyone was encouraged to read the document thoroughly and express their thoughts. Cooperation was optional. "But this will cause too much disruption," Koharu stammered, struggling to come up with a solid argument. "I knew these two old foxes wouldn't just sit quietly." A vein pulsed on Tsunoda's forehead as she gripped the desk tightly, clearly on the verge of losing her temper. Behind her, Shikaku took a cautious step back, deciding it was safer to keep some distance. If Tsunoda snapped, he might get caught in the crossfire. Disruption? What disruption? Takuya signaled for Tsunoda to stay seated, taking over the conversation. "Whether they are civilians or ninjas, they are all part of Hidden Leaf Village. Ninjas are the village's military force, naturally, they need to be registered. Even civilians are required to have their identities documented. Why should ninjas be any different? Am I wrong?" He spread his hands and asked again. "Am I wrong? Is this disruptive? Are these ninjas not part of Hidden Leaf Village? Or does registering them somehow strip them of their clan affiliation? The village will not interfere with how clans train their ninjas. All we're asking for is a simple registration. Is that too much? Is it so difficult?" Takuya's rapid-fire questions left everyone speechless. No past actions would be investigated, no clan development would be interfered with, the reform was merely about bringing hidden individuals into the light. If you still can't cooperate under such conditions, then what's the point of continuing? You might as well flip the table and end everything. The Sarutobi and Shimura clans wanted to object, but they didn't dare to be the first to speak out. The third Hokage had already warned them, Tsunoda was determined. They could silently oppose the reform, but stepping forward as the first to defy her would only invite trouble. Reluctantly, the two clans chose to remain silent, despite their growing anxiety. Koharu and Hamura, however, felt increasingly sidelined. Finding out about such a significant matter at the same time as everyone else highlighted just how far they'd fallen from relevance. Despite their titles as elders, they were no longer trusted by the Hokage. To make matters worse, they were also among those who opposed the census. They had engaged in too many questionable activities over the years. Bringing everything to light would inevitably lead to chaos. Hokage-sama, the training of clan ninjas is a right granted to the clans by the village. I believe there are certain boundaries that should not be crossed. This is disrespectful to the clans. As the head of one of the most conservative clans, Hayashi Hyuga was firmly against the census. For the Hyuga clan, this reform posed a significant challenge, even though they had done nothing unethical. Unlike other clans, which either didn't have enough members to hide or were afraid of exposing their secrets, the Hyuga clan opposed the reform purely out of principle. I knew Hayashi Hyuga would object. Fugaku Uchiha glanced at Hayashi, who had stepped forward as the spokesperson for the opposition. Externally, he remained composed, but internally, he was thoroughly amused. Oppose it, then. Let's see how well your Hyuga clan fares. So, the Hyuga clan refuses to cooperate. Since Hayashi had taken the lead, the Hyuga clan was prepared to face targeted scrutiny and difficulties. What surprised Hayashi, however, was that Tsunade showed no signs of anger. The fists she had clenched moments earlier were now relaxed. She merely asked the question casually. Hayashi was puzzled but chose to remain silent, effectively confirming the Hyuga clan's stance. The clan would not accept the census. Hayashi hadn't wanted to be the spokesperson for opposition, but the clan elders wouldn't allow him to back down. Remaining silent would result in him being berated upon his return. Fine. Your problem now. Tsunade rubbed her temples, too tired to argue further. She waved at Takeya, signaling for him to take over. Such a minor issue, and it's already giving you a headache. But Tsunade's direct nature made it impossible for her to handle things like the third Hokage did, subtly and behind the scenes. Instead, her reactions were often straightforward and blunt. Shrugging in resignation, Takeya stood, clapped his hands, and asked, I'm busy, so I'll keep this short. I'll ask once, if your clan agrees, raise your hand. In moments like this, the best approach was to cut through the nonsense quickly. There was no time to debate endlessly. Agree or disagree, it was a simple choice. So direct? So audacious? Agree or refuse? Those were the only two options Takeya presented, leaving no room for debate. In the past, such matters would require long, drawn-out meetings before a decision could be made. Tsunade had already passed the responsibility on, but Takeya took it a step further. Forget the arguing, it's pointless. Just vote. Would anyone agree? The clan representatives instinctively looked around, observing each other's reactions. In the sea of hesitation, only Fugaku Uchiha raised his hand, standing out like a beacon in the night. The Uchiha clan. Agreed. Chapter 523, Refusing to Cooperate. Let the bullets fly. For a while many found it surprising, though those who understood the situation could see the truth. The Uchiha were no longer the same as before. It was clear they had chosen to pledge loyalty to Tsunade. Thus, they cooperated without hesitation. Are there any other clans willing to cooperate? Scanning the room again, Takeya noticed Naruto reluctantly raise his hand, looking deeply resigned. The meeting room was filled with people, yet only 2 hands were raised. The atmosphere felt undeniably tense. Good. Tsunade's hands, which had just relaxed, balled into fists again. Takeya wasn't surprised in the slightest. This was the outcome he had anticipated all along. The Uchiha had no choice but to cooperate, as they had pledged allegiance. The Inoshikacho trio, bound by their neutral stance, had to cooperate as well. As for the other clans, the major clans were unwilling, and the smaller clans dared not take sides, opting instead to wait and watch. The Hatake clan is willing to cooperate with the village. Kakashi Hatake's voice echoed through the meeting room. Even though he wasn't present at the meeting, his words carried weight. The Hatake clan was small, but as long as Sakamo stood strong, the clan remained intact. Anyone else willing to raise their hand? Takeya glanced around the room, but no one responded. Some kept their heads down in silence, while others hesitated, watching the situation unfold. Very well, then. Today's meeting is adjourned. Everyone is dismissed. The Anbu will visit the Uchiha and the Inoshikacho clans for the census. Meeting over. With that, Takeya was the first to leave, followed by Tsunade, who rose with an expressionless face. Why are you all staring at me? If you have a problem, take it up with Choza, said Naruto, shrugging off the blame before making a swift exit. Fugaku Uchiha, unfazed by the gazes of others, left the room with steady composure. What's going on? Why suddenly start this census? Who knows? Anyway, it doesn't affect us much. Our clan doesn't have many people. True enough. The major clans couldn't feel at ease, while the smaller clans remained indifferent. After all, it didn't impact them directly. Their choice to remain neutral wouldn't make them targets of Tsunade's ire either. Avoiding offense on either side, The safest move was to wait and watch. The Uchiha weren't afraid of being targeted, but smaller clans couldn't afford to take that risk. This is infuriating. Tsunade had anticipated some resistance, but she hadn't expected almost no support. The Uchiha and the Inoshikacho trio hardly counted as backing. A meeting lasting less than 10 minutes had left Tsunade thoroughly exasperated. But it also made her realize that there could be no half measures. This census had to be completed, no matter what. Nothing could stop her. Unlike the furious Tsunade, Takuya was calm, sitting back with his legs crossed and humming a tune. "You're in the mood to hum?" Tsunade glared at him with a fiery gaze, prompting Takuya to cough and say, "Why are you glaring at me? I'm not the one opposing you. Like I said, those willing to cooperate, we proceed with them. Those unwilling? Forget it. You still have the nerve to say that." Lowering her hand in frustration, Tsunade turned to gaze out the window at the village's streets and traditional buildings. With a sideways glance, she asked, "So, what now? Do we force the clans to agree? Force them? Why would we do that? If we don't, do you think they'll agree? Of course they will. Besides, we don't need to act ourselves." Takuya leaned back, speaking with an air of ease. "Just make the contents of the meeting public and send people to the Uchiha, Inoshikacho, and Hatake clans. Even though the Hatake clan is small, they're still a ninja clan. Force them." That approach was far too aggressive. There was no need for such heavy-handed tactics. All they had to do was make the meeting's proceedings public, nothing more. Just sit back and watch the show. The villagers, once angered, won't stay rational. Some things were inevitable, so there was no point in overthinking them. Takuya still had to meet with representatives from other villages to discuss matters related to perfect Jinchuriki. The census could wait for now. Or, as they might say in his past life, let the bullets fly for a while. They weren't doing anything wrong. A census of ninja clans was beneficial to the village and had no downsides. Once everything was made public, the villagers would naturally wonder, if this was good for the village, why oppose it? What are you hiding? Why can the Uchiha, Inoshikacho, and Hatake clans cooperate, but you can't? Are you disregarding the Hokage? Or is your clan hiding something shady? Initially, Takuya had considered having the Anbu spread some rumors. But on second thought, was it even necessary? Not at all. Just making the information public would suffice. "Sir." As Takuya stepped out of the Hokage's office, an Anbu ninja appeared, handing him the flatbread he had requested earlier along with some change. "Thank you." After expressing his gratitude, Takuya took a bite of the flatbread and headed downstairs to a small conference room where representatives from other villages were waiting. Meanwhile, Tsunade had instructed Shikaku to organize the meeting's details and release them as an official announcement, just as Takuya had suggested. Hopefully, the villagers will stay calm, and their criticisms won't get too out of hand. Making the meeting's contents public might seem trivial, but it would have far-reaching consequences. At first, the villagers might feel confused. But once they understood, they would undoubtedly lash out at the clans refusing to cooperate. Why must ordinary villagers and civilian ninjas have their identities fully documented, while the major clans get to hide people? The Hokage has already clarified, it's just a census. Why can't you cooperate? Shikaku could already foresee the situation spiraling out of control. Thankfully, the Inoshikacho trio had avoided making any foolish moves by siding with Tsunade. Otherwise, they too would have been caught in the storm. Facing discontent from other clans was far better than enduring the villagers' anger and insults. In contrast to the tense ninja clan meeting upstairs, the atmosphere in the downstairs conference room was far livelier. The attendees sat around, chatting amicably over tea. Even those who would normally want to kill each other managed to set aside their grievances for the moment. Representatives from Hidden Mist Village, Hidden Clouds Village, Hidden Stones Village, and Hidden Sand Village were all present. In addition to these four major ninja villages, there was also a representative from the lesser-known Hidden Waterfall Village. Though Hidden Waterfall Village wasn't one of the 5 great ninja villages, it was among the strongest of the smaller villages. With a tailed beast in its possession, its presence wasn't surprising. For a small village to manage the 7 tails for so many years without losing control, it was clear that Hidden Waterfall Village had some strength of its own. Chapter 524, We're not here for a war of words. I've heard your village has cultivated some unique herbs in the desert. If possible, we could explore cooperation between our 2 villages once this is over. Hidden Sand Village would be happy to cooperate, but only if your village stops blocking the sea routes and allows outsiders to approach. That won't be a problem. The main issue is that the Land of Wind doesn't have any particularly desirable resources, and your nation lacks the strength to establish proper trade routes. The walls your village built are impressive. It took us several tries to breach them, and we lost a lot of people last time. They're nothing compared to your village. Everyone's a brute who charges headfirst into battle. Even the thickest walls can't hold up against that. While the conversation seemed amicable on the surface, it was filled with sharp undertones, with each side stabbing at the other's vulnerabilities. Watching this exchange between the four great ninja villages, the Hidden Waterfall village representative cowered in a corner, trembling with fear. Looks like everyone's getting along just fine. As Takeya entered the conference room, he closed the door behind him. He glanced at the bickering Yagura and Chio, then at Ei and Kitsuchi, who were grinning on the surface but ready to fight at any moment, and finally at the Hidden Waterfall village representative, who was visibly terrified. Hey, what a harmonious group we have here. The arrival of the central figure brought a sense of relief to the Hidden Waterfall village representative, who wiped the sweat from his brow. But as soon as he spoke, Chio, Yagura, Ei, and Kitsuchi all turned to glare at him. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, just ignore me. Pretend I'm not here. The poor guy. Giving him a sympathetic glance, Takuya walked forward and casually took a seat. Alright, that's enough. No need to scare someone from a small village, it's not a good look. By the way, little Ei, how's your injury? I'm Ei. Ei's already dark face grew even darker. Dodai had insisted he stay in the hospital to recover, but Ei refused. Wrapped in bandages and gauze, he had dragged himself to the meeting and, unfortunately, ended up sitting next to Kitsuchi. Naturally, their friendly banter quickly turned into a verbal sparring match. Over the years, conflicts between Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village had been frequent. Though small in scale, the constant skirmishes had created a deep-seated animosity between the two villages. As for Hidden Mist Village and Hidden Sand Village, their relationship wasn't much better. Hidden Mist Village often sent shinobi to visit the Land of Wind, sneaking into its borders and wandering around. While the damage caused was minimal, it was deeply irritating. The Land of Wind, with its vast expanse of desert and little strategic value, couldn't justify deploying large numbers of shinobi for constant patrols. By the time Hidden Sand Village realized Hidden Mist Village's shinobi were there, they would dispatch teams to drive them away. If they were lucky, they'd catch someone for a fight; if not, the intruders would vanish without a trace. I've heard Hidden Stones Village has been stockpiling supplies and preparing for war? Takeya asked deliberately. Kitsuchi, who behaved humbly in front of Anoki, was far less restrained here. Hearing this probing question, he replied calmly, just rumors. Hey. Thousands of shinobi gathering in the Land of Grass is just a rumor? A sneered and immediately called him out, then turned to Takeya with a curious look. He was eager to see Takeya's reaction to this information. After all, Hidden Stones Village's preparations were clearly aimed at attacking Hidden Leaf Village. How interesting, thought Chio and Yagura as they both glanced over, intrigued. Kitsuchi's face twitched, his anger barely concealed. He had an urge to strangle Ei on the spot. Is that so? Feigning ignorance, Takeya raised an eyebrow in mock surprise. That's unfortunate for the Land of Grass. Their homes are being stolen, and they don't even dare to protest. How pitiful. By the way, aren't Hidden Leaf Village and the Land of Grass allies? Too bad they didn't ask for help. Maybe they just enjoy being attacked. Kitsuchi forced a strained smile as he replied, maybe. Takeya nodded slightly, letting the matter drop. There was no point in pushing further, some things were self-evident. No reaction? A narrowed his eyes, clearly disappointed by Takuya's calm response. He had expected anger, maybe even outrage. That's it? I threw out a bombshell, and this is all I get? Not only did Takuya remain indifferent, but he even sympathized with the Land of Grass. Refusing to let it go, threw out another provocation. Our investigations show that Hidden Stones Village has also been reinforcing its Western Canyon. The Western Canyon? What's west of the Land of Earth? It didn't take much thought to realize that the reference point wasn't the Land of Earth but rather Hidden Leaf Village or the Land of Lightning. In other words. Yep, Chio's face just darkened. Humphrey. Unlike Takeya, Chio couldn't maintain her composure. She snorted coldly at Kitsuchi. The Western Canyon, there was no need for clarification. It was a clear threat to Hidden Sand Village. For both Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Stones Village, it was no longer a matter of subtle maneuvers, it was as if the words "we're planning to attack" were written across their foreheads. These were hardly secret developments. Both Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Sand Village were aware of them, though they weren't exactly actionable intelligence. Still, bringing them up now was enough to make Kitsuchi uncomfortable. What little smile he had managed to maintain vanished entirely. His gaze shifted to, filled with barely concealed killing intent. But O was unfazed. Kitsuchi's glare meant nothing to him. What a harmonious gathering. And this was just the representatives. If the 5 Kage were here, the atmosphere would be even more explosive. Imagine Tsunada's fiery temper, the third Raikage's tendency to start fights, and Anoki's knack for sarcasm. No, Let's not even think about Yagura and Raza. One lacked confidence, and the other seemed to enjoy being a submissive underling. The real drama would come from Anoki and the third Raikage, two longtime rivals. What are they even talking about? Can we switch to a less terrifying topic? The Hidden Waterfall Village representative continued to cower in his corner, trembling. Alright, everyone, we're not here to trade insults. Although Takuya enjoyed watching the villages bicker and nearly came to blows, this wasn't the time for such antics. There was serious business to attend to. Hearing this, the representatives set aside their anger and focused, ready to negotiate. The fact that Hidden Leaf Village was hosting this meeting indicated their willingness to exchange the method for creating perfect Jinchuriki for certain benefits. All that remained was to hash out the details. Your village. Yagura, still basking in the so-called honeymoon phase between Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Mist Village, began to speak. But before he could finish, Takuya cut him off. Holding a teacup and scanning their faces, Takuya said decisively, Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Clouds Village, 200 million each. Hidden Sand Village, Hidden Mist Village, and Hidden Waterfall Village, 100 million each, fair trade, no exceptions. Yagura's smile froze. Chio's mouth twitched. The Hidden Waterfall Village representative was utterly stunned. Chapter 525, too expensive? Unreasonable? Then don't buy. Kitsuchi hadn't even processed the situation when A slammed the table, standing up in fury. Why 200 million? Why do Hidden Mist Village, Hidden Sand Village, and Hidden Waterfall Village only have to pay 100 million, while Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village are charged 200 million? It was blatantly exploitative, treating Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village as if they were fat pigs to be slaughtered. Because Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village are allies of Hidden Leaf Village, so they get a 50% discount. Hidden Waterfall Village is a small village with limited funds, so they also get a discount. As for you two. Takuya spread his hands and smirked. One of you is rich and obsessed with eyeing Hidden Leaf Village and the Land of Fire, and the other is actively preparing to invade the Land of Fire. So, you pay full price. Oh, and no cash payments are accepted. Hidden Leaf Village only wants goods, grain or military supplies. Hidden Leaf Village didn't just lack money, they were severely short on resources, especially military necessities. Grain, weapons, ninja tool kits, explosive tags, all were scarce due to the prolonged war. Selling for cash? Not worth it at all. With the cost of supplies skyrocketing due to war, holding cash meant guaranteed losses. Prices could spike at any moment, leaving their funds significantly devalued. Trading directly in resources was far more practical and had the added benefit of depleting other villages' stockpiles. Particularly for Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Clouds Village, who were gearing up for war, stripping them of resources would make any invasion efforts far more challenging. This isn't fair to us. Despite his dislike for A and the ongoing tension between Hidden Stones Village and Hidden Clouds Village, Kitsuchi couldn't help but side with A under these circumstances. The claim of ally discounts was absurd, an obvious ploy to extort them. Did Hidden Leaf Village think they were fools? Hidden Stones Village wasn't nearly as wealthy as Hidden Clouds Village. Unlike Hidden Clouds Village, which had abundant resources, Hidden Stones Village was already stretched thin. I don't see any sincerity from Hidden Leaf Village. A growled, setting aside his usual grievances with Kitsuchi. His only focus now was getting that outrageous price lowered. And besides, the price is way too high. The price was indeed steep. Both Yagura and Chio had considered voicing this sentiment, but the 50% discount offered to their villages had effectively silenced them. As for the Hidden Waterfall Village representative, he didn't dare utter a word. For Hidden Waterfall Village, even the full price was something they'd have to grit their teeth and accept if it came to that. Still, they couldn't just let Hidden Leaf Village exploit them like this. Exchanging a glance, A and Kitsuchi silently agreed to form a temporary alliance, first to tackle the absurd pricing and discounts, then to negotiate further reductions. Oh? Faced with the aggressive A and the grumbling Kitsuchi, Takuya rose from his seat, his tone tinged with mock regret. If the price is too high for you, then let's talk when you feel it's acceptable. I've got other matters to attend to. I'll take my leave. Was he serious? The representatives from the villages sat there dumbfounded as Takuya casually stood up, opened the door, and walked out without hesitation. They were seasoned veterans, accustomed to navigating complex negotiations. But this was the first time they had encountered someone conducting business like this. He just threw out the price, didn't allow for any haggling, and then left. Too expensive? Unreasonable? Then don't buy. Such audacity. It took Yagura a moment to snap out of his daze. When he did, he chuckled, shaking his head. It seems Takuya hasn't changed a bit. If there's nothing more to discuss, then let's adjourn. Chio silently rose and left without a word. The Hidden Waterfall Village representative slunk away with his tail between his legs. In the end, only A and Kitsuchi were left in the room, staring at each other. Takuya, won't this anger them? Tsunoda had sent Kakashi Hatake to oversee the negotiations in case of any unforeseen complications. But watching Takuya walk out so abruptly left Tsukumo utterly dumbfounded. Let them stew for a bit. If the price is too high for them, they don't have to buy. We're not in a rush. After all, not all Jinchuriki are created equal. That's true. Tsukumo nodded in agreement. A perfect Jinchuriki could serve as the village's ultimate trump card. In contrast, an imperfect Jinchuriki was often more trouble than they were worth. A single misstep in the sealing process could lead to a tailed beast rampaging through the village, a disaster waiting to happen. Villages that possess tailed beasts would undoubtedly covet the ability to create perfect Jinchuriki. No matter how high the price, they would eventually come around. Still, was there really a shortcut to achieving such perfection? Tsukumo couldn't shake the feeling that this was all some elaborate bluff. Glancing at Takuya's profile, Tsukumo decided it was best to stay out of such complicated matters. He'd stick to managing the Anbu and handling his own responsibilities. Meanwhile, Takuya's abrupt exit left A and Kitsuchi both fuming. That damn Takuya. I bet he's lying to us. Back at Hidden Cloud's village's lodging, A couldn't hold back his anger. That bastard is demanding 200 million, refusing cash payments, and only accepting grain or military supplies. To top it all off, other villages get a discount, while Hidden Cloud's village pays full price. What a mess. Todai rubbed his temples and sighed. He had initially intended to handle the negotiations himself while they stayed behind to recover. But A had stubbornly insisted on going, dragging his injured body to the meeting, only to return within half an hour, seething with rage. Other villages getting discounts while Hidden Cloud's village and Hidden Stone's village were charged full price was indeed outrageous. To be fair, it was downright shameless. Yet there was little they could do about it. Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village received discounts because they were allies. Was Hidden Cloud's village an ally of Hidden Leaf Village? Hidden Stone's village was openly hostile, practically on the verge of declaring war. Was Hidden Leaf Village supposed to be lenient with them? From Hidden Leaf Village's perspective, it made perfect sense to weaken their enemies while strengthening themselves. There was nothing wrong with their approach. Of course, the villages being targeted didn't see it that way. Once A's fury subsided, Todai finally spoke up. If what Hidden Leaf Village is offering is truly effective, then even at full price, it's worth it. I know. A's expression darkened further as he snorted in frustration. It's just infuriating. But Hidden Leaf Village wouldn't dare lie about something like this, the consequences would be too severe. Deceiving all the major villages for the sake of profit would result in catastrophic fallout for Hidden Leaf Village. It would ruin their reputation and invite endless trouble. Given the risks, it was unlikely Hidden Leaf Village would fabricate the information they were selling. That damn brat. Every time they thought of Takuya's smug, nonchalant face, he ground his teeth in rage. We need to report this to Lord Raikage. While I was ranting, Kitsuchi wasn't faring much better. Though he didn't curse aloud like A, he stewed in his frustration silently before passing the information on to Anoki. The other village representatives were doing the same. Chio contacted Raza for further discussion, Yagura reached out to the elders of Hidden Mist Village, and the Hidden Waterfall village representative hurried to relay the news to his village. Each village had its own methods of transmitting information. As long as Hidden Lee Village didn't intervene, the details would spread quickly. Having wrapped up the Jinchuriki discussions, Takuya returned home to rest. He had no interest in helping Tsunoda handle the messy fallout. Such matters were better left to someone more suited for the job, like the ever-burdened Narashikaku. Meanwhile, the various clan representatives returned to their respective families as soon as the meeting ended. Sigh. Upon hearing the report, the third Hokage let out a long, weary sigh. Chapter 526, Don't want to manage the medical department? Or are you eyeing Hidden Leaf Village's ninja clans? The third Hokage knew there was no stopping this matter. Apart from the Uchiha, the Inoshikacho trio, and the Hatake clan, none of the other clans were willing to cooperate. Even the smaller clans remained silent. But the third Hokage understood that things were not so simple. Once Tsunoda made everything public, there wouldn't even be a need for further action. Those clans that didn't want to face public backlash or suspicion would voluntarily cooperate. The first to give in would inevitably be the smaller clans with few members. Their clans were already on the verge of fading into obscurity. What did they have to lose? As more clans began to cooperate, Tsunoda could simply publish the list of compliant clans. The remaining holdouts would become glaring targets, hated by the village. Go rest. I'll talk to Tsunoda about this, said the third Hokage. The heads of the Sarutobi and Shimura clans were hesitant to make any decisions without the third Hokage stepping in. Unfortunately, even with the third Hokage's involvement, nothing would change. At most, he could soften the blow to the Sarutobi and Shimura clans' reputations. As for the other clans, they were beyond his help. Are you sure you won't meet with them? I can't meet them, and I shouldn't. If they have issues, they should discuss them with Tsunade, not me. I'm retired. The third Hokage's wife, Biwako Sarutobi, shook her head and left. If the third Hokage refused to meet with Koharu Utatane and Hamura Mitakato, there was no convincing him otherwise. But she agreed with his reasoning. If they had concerns, they should address them with Tsunade, not come running to him. Meeting with them would risk creating misunderstandings. If he met with Koharu and Hamura, how could he refuse other clan leaders who might come knocking? Refusing would lead to widespread resentment. Accepting would only turn him into a shield for Tsunade's critics, undermining her authority as Hokage. Koharu, Hamura, he said he won't meet you, nor should he. You need to talk to Tsunade. Relaying the message, Biwako left Koharu fuming. Are we just supposed to sit back and watch Tsunade make a mess of things? Koharu slammed the table in frustration. Or maybe. Biwako replied, Tsunade isn't the one making the mess. Koharu. Hamura. Even the Sarutobi and Shimura clans were not allowed to make decisions independently. The third Hokage insisted on negotiating with Tsunade personally. This clearly showed that resistance was futile, and cooperation was the only option. If even the third Hokage supported the census, Koharu and Hamura's opposition was a losing battle. Tsunade was the fourth Hokage. If the third Hokage openly opposed her, their relationship as master and student would collapse entirely. If that happened, the fallout wouldn't just stop at the ninja census, it would shake Hidden Leaf Village to its core. While Koharu and Hamura expressed their outrage, the Hyuga clan was no less agitated. A group of elders staunchly opposed the census, refusing to accept such an arrangement. At this moment, the announcement from the Hokage's office had already been released to the public. Just as Takuya had predicted, most villagers were initially baffled by the news. A census of ninja clans? What was the point of that? Weren't all village ninjas already registered? Otherwise, where did their identification papers come from? The initial confusion soon gave way to realization, which quickly escalated into anger. What are these clans trying to pull? Why oppose the Hokage's decision to register all ninjas? What's so wrong with that? Actually, the real question is, why do ninja clans think they're above everyone else? Us civilian ninjas all have to register, but they only register part of their members? This is unfair. Once they understood the situation, many villagers began criticizing the uncooperative clans. Even most civilian ninjas felt disgruntled. Ninja clans enjoyed special privileges because of their contributions to the village, while civilian ninjas did not. This long-standing resentment had always existed beneath the surface. Once it was brought into the open, the tensions became impossible to ignore. With Hidden Leaf Village's large population of villagers and civilian ninjas, the backlash against the clans was overwhelming. Even though civilian ninjas couldn't inflict much harm on the clans, their united efforts to ostracize and target them were enough to cause significant distress. The situation quickly began to evolve in the direction Takuya and Tsunade had anticipated. Some more aggressive villagers and civilian ninjas even started openly confronting clan ninjas. To make matters worse, when conflicts arose, the Uchiha police force and the Anbu, who came to mediate, often sided with the villagers. Unlike before, they no longer maintained strict neutrality. As the situation escalated, the Hokage's office showed no intention of intervening. They neither fanned the flames nor provided assistance, allowing the matter to spread unchecked. Tsunade, there are already reports of civilian ninjas banding together to target clan ninjas. If this continues unchecked, it could fracture the village's ninja forces. This will have a huge impact on the village's management. There's still time to cancel this census and contain the damage. With the situation spiraling out of control, Koharu and Hamura could no longer stand by and came to the Hokage's office to confront Tsunade. Tsunade listened in silence as they rambled on. Only when they had exhausted themselves did she look up from her documents. When have civilian ninjas and clan ninjas ever truly been united? While civilian ninjas were numerous, they lacked strength. In contrast, clan ninjas were few but disproportionately powerful. This divide had always existed, it just hadn't been openly acknowledged until now. When my grandfather and great-uncle were concerned that the Senju clan's dominance would undermine the Hokage's authority, they disbanded the clan name, scattering its members and integrating them into the village to strengthen the civilian ninja population. Yet even then, this only applied to the Senju clan. The other clans were left untouched. And now, you're still not satisfied? Also, please address me as Hokage-sama. When there were benefits to be gained, these elders were silent. But when their privileges were at risk of exposure, they became the loudest voices of opposition. According to the Anbu's investigation, many clan representatives had approached Koharu and Hamura, Who even contemplated calling a council of elders? If not for concerns about opposition from the Uchiha and the Inoshikacho trio, that council would already be underway. Instead, they were here in the Hokage's office, voicing their complaints. With a stern expression, Tsunade fixed her gaze on Koharu and Hamura. You two elders have consistently opposed the census reform. Does this mean the clans behind you have done something so heinous that they fear exposure? Of course not. The clans they represented had merely benefited from their ties to the third Hokage. They hadn't done anything truly despicable. Koharu loudly defended herself. I simply believe this census will cause widespread dissatisfaction among the clans, creating resentment toward the village. That's all. If that's the case, then I suggest you focus on your responsibilities. Don't meet with people you shouldn't be meeting. As I recall, the medical department is your jurisdiction. Or are you suggesting the medical department isn't important enough for you, and you'd prefer to manage Hidden Leaf Village's ninja clans instead? Tsunade, you're slandering us. Koharu and Hamura's faces turned green. If Tsunade spread such claims, they would become pariahs among the ninja clans. If just a simple census could cause such an uproar, imagine the chaos if an entire department was created to oversee the clans. That would be unthinkable. Chapter 527, Who said we don't have information on perfect Jinchuriki? If I say we do, then we do, Humphrey. The situation was out of their control, and Tsunade had no intention of listening to them or granting them more power. Continuing to press the issue would only increase the risk of becoming scapegoats. With darkened expressions, Koharu Utatane and Hamura Midokado prepared to leave, their attempt to persuade Tsunade having ended in failure. But before they could step out of the Hokage's office, Tsunade spoke. Elders, I've promised the old man not to pursue certain past matters, but please don't make things harder for me. Don't give me a reason to revisit old issues, and don't hand me an excuse to start digging. Some things can't stay hidden forever, I hope you understand that. Her message was clear. She had let bygones be bygones, but if they pushed her too far, there would be no turning back. The pair hesitated for a moment, then left in silence, their faces grim. They're gone? Takuya jumped in through the window, landing gracefully. Those two old fools really don't know when to stop. Even the third Hokage has washed his hands of this, yet they still think they can stir things up. If worse comes to worst, we could make an example of them. I'd actually love to see how much of the village's wealth they've pocketed over the years. The clans behind Koharu and Hamura weren't particularly large or small. These days, they were decently prominent, but in the past, they had been utterly insignificant. As the saying goes, when one rises to power, there can benefit. Relying on their authority and collusion with the third Hokage, these two had seized plenty of resources for themselves. If pushed too far, cutting them down wouldn't be a bad option. Targeting the Saratobi or Shimura clans would be too risky due to their scale, but these moderately sized, dirtied clans? They were perfect candidates. No rush. Tsunade wasn't eager to escalate matters, especially with the looming threat of war hanging over the village. What about the negotiations? They hit a wall. I'm letting them stew for a couple of days before resuming talks. The longer this drags on, the more it benefits us. I pegged Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village at 200 million each and gave the others half that price, 100 million. Only accepting resources, no cash. PFFT, cough, cough. Tsunade, sipping tea, spat it out in shock. She stared at Takuya, her voice raised in disbelief. How much did you say? 200 million. 100 million. Why? Too little? Wasn't that a lot already? If it was still considered insufficient, the other villages definitely wouldn't buy. Money didn't grow on trees, after all. Besides, Takuya was only accepting resources, not cash. At this point, the entire shinobi world was dealing with resource shortages due to the war. Prices were sky high, and bartering with resources was a costly endeavor. This strategy hit Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village particularly hard as they were actively preparing for war. Forcing them to part with significant stockpiles of resources would undoubtedly impact their war efforts. Tsunade looked at Takuya with a mix of amusement and disbelief. You really are a natural negotiator, aren't you? Charging that kind of price, giving them a hard time, and then walking out? What if they get fed up and decide not to buy? 200 million, 300 million, even if it was just resources, that kind of supply could make Hidden Leaf Village well prepared for any war. Even a cash transaction at that scale would be thrilling for Tsunade. Her heart raced. Was this the feeling of excitement? Could Hidden Leaf Village really score big from this deal? But after a moment's hesitation, Tsunade voiced a concern that dampened her excitement. But we don't actually have any reliable intel on perfect Jinchuriki. Is it really worth this much? Who said we don't? Takuya's eyes widened in mock indignation. You silly woman. Most people would fabricate something to rake in the money, But here you are, hesitating even when the money is practically in your hands. If I say we do, then we do. Take it or leave it, simple as that. The difference between an ordinary Jinchuriki and a perfect Jinchuriki was immense. Takuya was confident that these villages would pay up to obtain that edge. And if they acquired the intel but still couldn't turn their Jinchuriki into perfect ones? Well, that was their own failure. Who could they blame for that? Claiming the intel was fake? Impossible. Yagami Takuya never lies. Tsunade rubbed her forehead. Fine, you win. If you're that confident, I'll leave it to you. I just want results. That's all I needed to hear. Now, let's let the clan ninjas stew in their own troubles. If they can't handle the pressure, they'll come around. Those who won't cooperate, let them keep taking the heat. Such an approach might strain relationships between Hidden Leaf Village and certain clans, but neither Takuya nor Tsunade cared much. A few disgruntled clans, even large ones, couldn't change anything on their own. They couldn't even afford to openly rebel. At most, they'd grumble in private. As more clans, such as the Uchiha, Inoshikacho, and Hatake, completed their censuses and the results were announced, the villagers finally got a glimpse of the sheer power held by these ninja families. The Uchiha in particular stunned everyone with their numbers, dozens of Jonin and hundreds of Chunin. Who would have imagined a single clan could wield such an enormous force? While Geinin numbers were less noteworthy, the number of Chunin and Jonin was what truly mattered, and the Uchiha stood leagues ahead. Following the Uchiha's lead, the Inoshikacho trio and the Hatake clan also complied. Compared to the pitifully small Hatake clan, the Inoshikacho trio was far more impressive in size, though they still couldn't rival the Uchiha. In terms of high-ranking members, the Inoshikacho trio paled in comparison to the Uchiha. For example, the Uchiha's number of Jonin alone was several times that of the Inoshikacho clans combined. As these figures were made public, the praise for clans like the Uchiha, Inoshikacho, and Hatake spread across Hidden Leaf Village. This indirectly improved the Uchiha's image among the villagers. Although the Uchiha still carried themselves with their usual arrogance, the explanations and transparency helped shift public perception. Some villagers even began comparing them to the Hyuga clan, noticing that the Hyuga were even harder to approach than the so-called Mad Uchiha. As the saying goes, comparison breeds resentment. This newfound comparison made the Hyuga clan anxious. Why compare us to the Uchiha, that reckless clan? We're not lunatics. Under increasing pressure, some smaller clans began to cave in, opting to cooperate and align themselves with Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 528, Little Sunshine. There's a lot you don't know. Gradually, even some medium-sized clans with smaller populations and neutral stances began to cooperate. As more clans opted to comply, the tide started to turn. Those that remained resistant became the center of attention. Teacher, we're heading back now. Though they were a bit reluctant, the three members of the Akatsuki organization bid farewell to Takuya, departing with the envoy from the Land of Rain to return home. Are you hiding something from me? Giving Minato a sidelong glance, Takuya couldn't be bothered to respond. You want to save them, but you're unwilling to say it outright. Minato wasn't particularly close with Konan and the Akatsuki trio, but he knew Takuya well enough, sometimes even better than Takuya knew himself. After all, no one spends their time obsessively analyzing their own behavior, but others might. That's why there's a saying, the person who knows you best might not be yourself, it could be your friend, your lover, or even your enemy. Minato was still the same little sunshine. Not as clueless as Nawaki, who missed every hint. They're in a dangerous situation. I want to help them, but I don't know how. Takuya finally admitted, watching as the envoy from the Land of Rain slowly disappeared from view. Dangerous situation? The Akatsuki organization could indeed be a problem for Hidden Rain Village. After thinking it over for a moment, Minato asked, since they're with the daimyo, Hanzo wouldn't target them, right? Even if the Akatsuki's actions conflict with Hidden Rain Village, their intentions are good, they're still working for the sake of the Land of Rain, even if their methods differ. You're overthinking it. If it were just Hanzo, things would be simpler. Takuya replied. Hanzo targeting the Akatsuki? That would be unlikely. For one thing, it would risk antagonizing the daimyo, and Hanzo wasn't that foolish. Moreover, the Akatsuki hadn't directly caused problems for Hidden Rain Village. Unless Hanzo was being irrational, he wouldn't go after them. And if he did corner the Akatsuki, Hanzo would likely meet a grim end. The Rinnegan? A powerful yet dangerous tool. You mean there's a potential enemy even more dangerous than Hanzo? Minato was taken aback. That couldn't be right. In the Land of Rain, only Hanzo posed a significant threat to them. A foe more dangerous than Hanzo shouldn't exist. Something was definitely off. Are you sure you're not mistaken? There shouldn't be anyone in the Land of Rain capable of that. Minato continued. And honestly, they probably couldn't handle Hanzo, either. I'm not trying to undermine them. Minato quickly clarified. I'm just stating the facts. On the surface, the trio appeared strong, but defeating Hanzo was an entirely different matter. Minato wasn't being pessimistic, he genuinely didn't want to see them get hurt. After all, even the legendary Sannin had struggled against Hanzo. How could Konan and her group hope to take him on? There's a lot you don't know. Waving dismissively, Takuya turned away, his shoes crunching against the thick snow. A lot I don't know? Minato stood there, bewildered for a moment, before hurrying to catch up with Takuya. What's your problem? No problem at all. Then why are you following me? No reason. Minato trailed right behind Takuya, mirroring his every step. He didn't press for more information, he just stuck close, silently implying that he wouldn't leave until he got some answers. Get lost. I'm going to the bathroom, you want to follow me there too? Fine, I'll tell you afterward. After trying to keep his cool unfailing, Takuya finally snapped. Minato chuckled and stepped away. He knew that when Takuya lost his temper, it meant the truth wasn't far behind. This damn guy. Takuya couldn't help but laugh despite himself. Minato knew he'd pushed Takuya to the edge, and that Takuya was about to spill some secrets. But knowing that he might be in for some payback, Minato wisely recruited some backup before Takuya could return. When Takuya emerged from the washroom, drying his hands, he noticed a room full of people, Nawaki, Pakura, and others, gathered in the living room. He sighed in exasperation. Well played, Minato. You knew I'd be mad, so you brought in reinforcements. Takuya, are you going to tell us the secret? Nawaki, who could never keep his mouth shut, raised his hand and shouted eagerly. Ignoring him, Takuya accepted a towel from Pakura to dry his hands and casually asked, no missions today? None. Pakura shook her head, fetching his slippers and explaining, the surveillance squad has already left the village. The mission is complete. Do you notice something weird about those two? Nawaki made a strange face and winked at Minato. Look at them, one naturally helping, the other just as naturally accepting it. It's like watching a wife taking care of her husband who just got home. What are you talking about? I didn't see anything. Minato stared at the ceiling, clearly unwilling to get involved in that topic. Takuya didn't need to look to know that Nawaki was definitely up to no good. By the way, I just had a meeting with Tsunade and Fugaku Uchiha. They told me that the girl you've got your eye on has already found someone. They asked me to break the news to you gently. Nawaki froze, his grin fading as despair clouded his eyes. His mouth opened as if to say something, but no words came out. He looked utterly defeated. Serves you right for trying to make trouble. Now you know who you're dealing with. Don't mess with someone who even your sister can't handle. Really? Nawaki, visibly shaken, made a poor excuse and quickly left. Who knew where he'd go? Probably find a secluded spot to sulk or have a drink in peace. On the surface, he seemed mature, but inside, he was still quite naive. At least, that was Pakura's assessment of him. She couldn't quite understand how just one sentence could leave Nawaki so devastated. Is Takuya's fire going to burn me next? Minato was stunned. He couldn't believe Takuya would hit so brutally. Maybe that was a bit harsh? Nawaki's probably feeling pretty down right now. Better to crush his hopes early than let him hold on to illusions and get hurt even more later. The pain's the same, might as well get it over with quickly. So, does she really have someone she likes? Minato had a feeling that Takuya was exaggerating, just to mess with Nawaki. Yeah, she does. And that person is me. Takuya snapped back, clearly unamused. Minato was speechless, and Pakura shot Takuya a sidelong glance. Are you being narcissistic, or just shameless? If it was just a joke, fine, but if people took it seriously, it could lead to misunderstandings. Takuya clarified, actually, she doesn't really have someone she likes. She just doesn't want to marry outside her clan. She'd rather find someone within her own family. Would that make any difference to Nawaki? Not really. Takuya had only said it that way to provoke him. Well, there's nothing to be done. I'll just have to console Nawaki later, Minato thought, looking resigned. So, what about the Akatsuki and the Land of Rain? Who was this potential threat? Chapter 529, The Legendary Sage's Eyes, the Rinnegan I don't know. Takuya bluntly dropped those 3 words. Are you messing with me? Minato's eyes widened in disbelief, and he even pulled out a kunai from his pouch, ready to make his displeasure known. If Takuya kept up with this nonsense, he might have to teach him a lesson, like giving him an extra eye on his backside to open his perspective. Put that thing away, Takuya said, rolling his eyes. I'm serious, I really don't know. At least, not for sure. He spread his palms in a gesture of innocence. Have you ever paid attention to Nagato's eyes? There were some things that couldn't be disclosed prematurely, And while it wasn't too early to mention the Rinnegan, it still wasn't the right moment for full transparency. Takuya even considered spreading this information after the deals with the other villages were concluded, just to see how figures like Madara Uchiha and Black Zetsu, hidden in the shadows, would react. The other villages' responses would also be worth observing. His eyes? Minato furrowed his brows. Upon Takuya's reminder, he realized that while he had met Nagato several times, he had never once focused on the boy's eyes. Nagato always kept long hair draped over half his face, clearly trying to avoid drawing attention to himself.